2025. Should I do the Peter Mark thing first before the roll call? Roll call first. Okay. Okay. Beth?
Councilmember Burke.
Here.
Councilmember Wilkinson.
Present.
Mayor Cooper.
Here.
Councilmember Carapiet. Here. Councilmember Mark.
Here.
Okay. Councilmember Mark has requested to participate in this meeting by teleconference without posting the agenda at his remote location using the Brown Act's emergency circumstance exception. Councilmember Mark, can you provide a brief general description of the emergency circumstance?
Thank you, Mayor Cooper. Yeah, my wife's mother is gravely ill and we're down in Southern California tending to her at this moment. So thank you for allowing this emergency circumstances exemption. Just one further note, there's nobody here in this room as per the
Okay.
regulations.
Thank you. In using this exception, Councilmember Mark must disclose whether any individuals are present in the room, which he did say they are not, and the general nature of the members' relationship, but there's no one there. I would also like the record to reflect that a majority of the council is present in person in the city council chambers, which is open to the public. May I have a motion to approve council members' remote attendance tonight?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes, aye.
Councilmember Wilkinson.
Yes.
Mayor Cooper.
Yes.
Councilmember Carapiet.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark, please remember you must participate through audio and video technology and stay on screen. Council members, please note that all votes taken during council members Mark's remote attendance must be taken by roll call vote. And with that, we will open public comment on our closed session item. No one is here. Is there anyone on Zoom?
There is no one on Zoom.
Okay, in that case, we'll adjourn to closed session. See you upstairs, Peter. Oh, I forgot to turn on the microphone. Now you can all hear me. I'm reopening the open session and announcing that no action was taken in closed session. So with that, we will go to council reports. Does anyone here have a report of anything they'd like to share?
I'd like to share that I attended the library board meeting in Kevin's absence. And they went over their midterm budget and talked about their programs and their goals for the year. And that's all I have to report.
Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, Mayor. Just real quick, at this month's Transit Authority of Marin meeting, there was a presentation by the authority working to consolidate or have a consistent VMT calculation across all the municipalities in Marin. And I would just encourage our city staff to keep up on that, because I think that will be a valuable metric, because I know we struggled with that in the past, different forms of calculating increases or decreases in vehicles miles traveled. So if we follow suit with the rest of the municipalities and the county, I think that'll help us with larger applications in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just give a brief update on the discussions we're having in relation to looking for a new fire model. So we've mentioned before that we have been working with LAFCO and Tiburon Fire Protection District. And at LAFCO's last meeting, we have hired Citygate to undertake that study to look at possible alternatives to our existing fire model, up to and including annexation into Tiburon Fire Protection District. That review is going to take 7 to 8 months, according to the estimates that we've been provided with. And after our group has reviewed the recommendations, we'll be holding a number of public forums to get feedback from the public. So that will come late this year or early into next year.
Thank you. And I would like to report that Mayor Holly Thier and I put on a fire safety forum held at the library. It was great to have that location, and everyone was really helpful there. Over 100 residents from Belvedere and Tiburon attended. And if you couldn't attend, I wanted everyone to know that the video of that meeting is on the Belvedere website, and I'm pretty sure is also on the Tiburon website, so that everyone can see and learn all the information. And our working group, Be Ready Belvedere, will be taking it from there, what we learned, and expanding on it for our personal use in Belvedere. I also accompanied a Viva Lawn volunteer, which used to be Meals on Wheels. And I accompanied them as they delivered some meals to the Tiburon Peninsula. This organization really offers more than meals. That when you go, it's a nice opportunity to visit with the individuals, and they offer programs, and they do have a ride share program also for low-income seniors. So if you know anyone who might benefit from that organization, there'll be something in the Belvedere Breeze this Friday where you can connect with Viva Lawn. Okay, then next is the city manager report. Mr. Zadnik.
Yes, thank you. Public comment.
Oh, is there any public comment about city council reports? No. Okay. Oh, on Zoom.
Mayor Cooper, out of the 8 attendees, there are no hands raised.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Cooper. We do have a fuller agenda tonight and a full room, so I'll be quick. I wanted to start off first by mentioning that we've been in regular conversations this month with Mallard Point, the developer, and things are starting to move again. If you recall from February, I mentioned that our review of their demolition and infrastructure plan applications had been on pause while the updated cost recovery agreement was negotiated. We do expect the agreement to be signed soon, so we can begin processing their applications and completeness soon as well. The planning department has hired outside firms to assist in peer reviewing the technical components of their submittals, and as part of next year's budget, we'll be asking for funding to support a part-time project manager for the day-to-day oversight of demolition, construction, and compliance. I also wanted to mention that we have received an application for the replacement of the bulkhead structure surrounding the property. Once the reimbursement agreement is in place, that document will be reviewed and uploaded to the Mallard Point page. Moving on, I think we all can agree that large construction projects can be disruptive, and it's very important to keep the community informed. So along those lines, I wanted to mention that SD5, Sanitary District 5, will soon be starting a pipe bursting project in portions of Belvedere and Tiburon. This work is necessary to rehab old and damaged sewer lines, replacing them with new modern materials. They're expecting work to start either the 17th or the 24th of March, but it's unclear now if that work will start in our jurisdiction or in Tiburon's. We will publish information on the website, and we'll plan to include a reference in this Friday's newsletter so the community can be prepared for any potential impacts. And then finally, I wanted to highlight that earlier this year, the city issued an RFP for design and engineering services related to reinforcing the seawall on Beach Road. Late last week, DPW opened bids for the project, and in April, we'll be bringing a contract approval request to the council for consideration. This is a roughly $3 million project, which will be completed over the next 2 years. There's still a lot of work to do, but I wanted to thank Tony for getting us started on this first step with the RFP. And that's all I have for now. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, does anyone have questions for the city manager? Councilmember Wilkinson.
Robert, I just have one quick question in relation to the SD5 upgrades. Do those include Beach Road upgrades?
Yeah, we don't know yet. We just heard today that they have a planned project. I wanted to make sure we got a shout out to the community, but we'll certainly be following up with SD5 later this week to find out exactly their scope of work.
Because obviously timing wise, if they tear up the road once and then next year we tear up the road again,
Yeah,
that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So it'd just be
Absolutely.
good to check in with them.
yeah, good idea.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Mayor, Councilmember Mark? No, okay. Then thank you for that report. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a presentation. What do I do now? Oh, is there public comment on the city manager report? Sorry, Robert, but I'm sure there is none.
There, there is. We have,
Oh, wow, yay!
We
You
have-
got an audience, yay!
we have Dr. Rothman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Robert said that there's going to be a project manager for Mallard Point and that he would be asking for a budget item to pay for that. I just wanted to be sure that Mallard Point was going to pay for it and reimburse for whatever the project manager was doing. Could he please clarify that?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so good question. We are going to be reimbursed, I'd say eventually for that work. Really, the city ends up intaking a majority of its fees when we're presented with building, when the building permit is issued. So at that point, we'll be taking in fees for each phase of the project, which will then cover the portion of that work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question and for clarifying that.
Mayor Cooper, there are no other hands raised.
Thank you. Okay, in that case, we'll move on to item 7C, presentation from the Belvedere Tiburon Library Director, Crystal Duran. If you want to come up, welcome. Thank you for coming this evening.
Good evening, Mayor Cooper, council members, staff, and members of the public. My name is Crystal Duran, the Director for the Belvedere Tiburon Library. Thank you for having us tonight for our annual update for the board, or for the council, excuse me. I also just want to acknowledge I have two trustees in the room with me right now. I've got trustee Roxanne Richards who's here and trustee Emily Poplawski. And I believe trustee Tony Hooker will be joining shortly too. So just a brief overview of the library. The JPA went into effect in 1995. So this year actually marks a significant year for us. The library will be celebrating its 30th anniversary of existence. And we're going to be marking that with a few different special activities. In May, we'll be filming or screening, excuse me, the Free for All film, which is a film about public libraries. We have a few donor events that will happen in the year, some special displays, and then we'll also have a large community event in the fall, followed by the launch of a robust new volunteer program that we have. Also, just some general overview about the library. So in fiscal year 24-25, we had a $3.57 million budget. That's revenue and expenditures. Currently, as of January 2025, we have about 2.5 million in reserve. And generally throughout the year, we maintain at least a 27% in reserve of our operating costs. 66% of our budget is allocated towards personnel costs. 12% goes to our collection and programs and services. So this are the materials that we use to lend out. It's also databases and resources that the community can access, as well as all of the expenses for our various programs that we have for children's, teens, and adults. 17% of our budget is allocated toward overhead and technology. So our utilities, our building maintenance, auditing, financials and things like that. And then lastly, about 4% of our budget is allocated to repaying the bond for the original library building at 1501 Tiburon. So back in 1995, we took out a bond for $1 million. And in fiscal year 26-27, we'll finally repay that bond. If you recall, in late 2023, the library went through a strategic planning process, and in January 2024, we adopted a 3-year plan. And this was really with the intent that we have this brand new beautiful facility. Let's go out to the community and let's hear about what the community wants in terms of programs and services and opportunities there. Hey, Tony. So one of the areas that I think we heard the most feedback around was making sure that the library was a warm and welcoming space. So we've been doing a lot of work towards that. One way we've done that is by improving the usability and wayfinding. We have a lot of new signage throughout the space so that you can find where rooms are. We've created this new lounge area right at the entryway. You'll see here, this furniture just went up in the last several weeks. So if anybody's coming in, they have somewhere that they can sit and meet and wait for folks if they're going to connect at the library as well. There's going to be more opportunities that you'll see throughout the year that we're making in terms of changes to the nave as well. We'll likely be relaying out the collection so it's more user-friendly. We're going to look at creative ways to make some more independent or private workspace available. Right now, it's a lot of open tables, but individuals tend to work privately. So there's still a lot of work that's coming for this as well. Another area in the strategic plan highlights the need to be responsive to community needs. And so we've done this in a few different ways. We also heard that there's still a big gap in terms of digital literacy needs and opportunities for seniors to learn about new and emerging technologies. So we have a lot of one-on-one tech support now, once a week. There are drop-in hours where members of the community can just come in, ask questions, usually bring in their device and get some support there. We'll be increasing that to twice a week just because it's such a in-demand resource. We also provide other digital literacy opportunities like workshops on different, how to use your iPhone, how to upload photos. And we've added some AI specific workshops as well, how to prompt AI tools. And we'll include some more programming on the ethical uses of AI as well. You'll find us out more in the community now as well. So you typically see us when there's a community event like the Juneteenth, like Belvedere Barbecue in the Park. We usually have a booth out there to connect with the community members as well. And lastly, another tool that we've started using in the last year is looking at our programs and evaluating them. So we'll spot evaluate various programs and use different tools to make sure that programs are high quality, that we're responsive to community needs, and we're taking that feedback, learning from it and applying it to the next program. It's also important for the library to partner with different organizations to leverage resources because we are not alone in the community. And to date, we've done this in a few different ways. Last summer, we partnered with the Audubon Society and we hosted a story walk out there. So this gave an opportunity for families who were visiting the Audubon to basically follow along with the story. Every several feet, there's a new page of the story that they're reading as they go on their trails together. We've also do some more pop-up programming and activities. One big partnership that we have that's been hugely successful is with the Rotary Club. And we co-sponsor programs and speakers. Essentially, they vet these different speakers at their various monthly Rotary meetings. And if they fit well within our strategic plan and in our mission, we'll look for opportunities to highlight them through a program. So that's a great partnership there. We've also partnered with the Rotary to do a back to school backpack drive at the Hiller Reader residence. We started that last year and I suspect we'll continue that because it was largely successful. A primary focus of any library should be to connect members to resources and expertise. And so one way we're doing this is by increasing the materials that people are asking for. So since the pandemic, we've noticed a huge increase in readership and ebook readership. So folks aren't waiting so much for the print version, they are now waiting more for the digital version. So we've increased our allocation and spending on ebooks to be responsive to those needs. And we're changing how we purchase ebooks so that it also reduces the wait times. And so we'll continue to do that as well and reevaluate our collection and services. Since September 2022, we've hosted over 16 art exhibits as well in the Library Art Gallery. And we're really diversifying our art exhibits. We have representation from artists across the Bay Area, and there's always a premiere. There's always an art reception that's well received, and also a premiere art talk program that coincides with the theme of the display. And then lastly, around connecting community members to expertise and resources is our makerspace. It provides a huge opportunity for innovation. It provides access to tools like laser cutter, 3D printers, opportunities to digitize media like 8mm film, VHS, and things like that. But what's been so interesting about the makerspace is that we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are using the tools in there, like the 3D printer, to print prototypes of their products that they want to take to scale and pitch. So that's been really interesting for staff to see that. Lastly, just a few little data points to share from July 2024 to February 2025. This is just a short period of time. This is indicating usage at the library. We've had over 94,000 visits. We've answered over 14,000 questions at our service points. And these are questions like, you know, I want a book on this topic, or I'd like some more research or support researching X, Y, and Z. It's not like where the restroom is. We don't count those for this number. We've had over 71,000 items checked out. This includes physical materials and digital materials. And right now, currently, we have just over 9,000 card holders, and these are 94920 card holders. With that, I did want to give a moment to Tony Hooker, who's the chair, who wanted to say a few comments. Do you want to join us, Phil?
Thank you. I'm Tony Hooker. I'm chair of the Belvedere Tiburon Library Agency, and I'm a Belvedere resident and a Belvedere appointed by the Belvedere Council. I have a different way of measuring the success of the library. You saw a bunch of statistics. My simple one is the parking lot full? And it is. And if you go down there and can't park, I think that's great because it means it's being used. I'd first like to thank all of you, the citizens of Belvedere, for the support, the fundraising that brought us to this point. We would not be here if it weren't for you all. And I'd also like to thank the volunteers. Right now, we have something in excess of 41 volunteers to help with corner books, art shows, and other events that the library puts on. What you have here is a beautiful community center. It's the heart of the community. It's where people can laugh, they can smile, they can read, and they can deal with computer things that all of us need to learn more about. Since I think the last time we talked to you all, which was probably the end of the construction period, The library is obviously completed construction, but we've gone on to organize the library, to review all of the administrative procedures that were in place, some of which are badly dated, and we're spending time removing, getting those improved. I think one amazing statistic is we had $3 million in debt when the construction was finished. That has been paid off. The library is essentially debt-free. There's one small bond issue left that gets paid off next year, but it's pretty minor. And I think that's a great accomplishment for all of you. So again, thank you all. I cannot encourage you enough to go to the library, enjoy some of the things they're offering. Make sure you read the ARC, which has this week in the Belvedere article. You should be getting a quarterly thing called In the Stacks, and take advantage of that. For example, right now, just at the leading edge of things over the next month and a half, I think it is, there's 3 programs from 11 to 12 on how to use artificial intelligence yourself at home. And so there's a lot going on. And again, thank you all very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Crystal. Also, does anyone from the council have any questions for either Mr. Hooker or Crystal?
I don't have a question specifically, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the staff at the library and the board for putting together what I think was a very innovative and thoughtful strategic plan. And I think what's even more impressive is to see, building plans is really easy to do. It's putting them to action and seeing the results of those plans, which is much harder. And it's really impressive to see those plans now coming to life. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. When I was attending the last board meeting, there was a gentleman, I believe from Kentfield, who has been using our library because we have 3D printers, and he donated, I don't know exactly what it does, but he did a dual
It's a dual nozzle. 3D
dual nozzle
printer.
3D, which everyone was very excited about, 3D printer. And I echo also what Councilmember Burke said, that building the building was a great challenge, mostly because of the time that it was being built, and led by a very talented citizen. But I think the important thing is that you are looking at the space and seeing how it's being used and where it needs to be improved or changed or increased. And I think it's going to be a constant work in progress. And I think that the board and the volunteers and yourself and the staff have done a fantastic job. And I think some of your programs in going into place are going to make it an even better place. So thank you very much.
And I, excuse me, echo everyone, but the only thing I can promise is that once I'm no longer mayor, or maybe no longer on the city council, when I get those in the stacks and I'm reading them through and saying, oh, I want to go to that and I want to go to that, I'm hoping I'll finally have time to go to them.
You and me both, Jade.
So I enjoy seeing all of it. I read those from the first sentence all the way to the last. I think they're great. You've done wonderful things for the community. And I agree with Tony. It really is a wonderfully warm place to come and just walk through and be. You always feel so comfortable. I love the art exhibits. So thank you for all you're doing and continue on doing a great job. So thank you so much for the report.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone here wishing to speak about the library presentation? No? Is there anyone on Zoom?
We have Dr. Rothman.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. It was as if the meeting that I attended at the library the last one I attended, that it never took place. Mr. Hooker spoke of the parking lot being full, and that night, the parking lot was definitely full. In addition, they had to have their board meeting in the founder's room because there was such a big crowd that showed up to complain. I would note that two of the leading donors to the rebuilding of the library, Marty Winter, the former mayor of Belvedere, and Steve Silverstein, spoke vociferously about the faults in the administration. And they cited the consultant's report, which pointed to such things as a chaotic administrative structure, dysfunction of the administration, the failure of the director to spend any time relating to staff, and a culture of fear. So I don't know quite what to say about that. They also were highly critical of the library firing the person, Milos Petrovic, who's been responsible for putting on many of the programs, the adult programs, that Councilperson Cooper referred to. So I don't mean to rain on the parade, but to ignore what actually took place, I think that's a kind of sorry state of affairs, however someone may feel about it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay. Anyone else on Zoom?
There are no other hands raised.
Okay, then in that case, Robert, I had a question. Do you think that we could exchange our 7E with 7D on the agenda?
Yes, I think just check with your other council members and ensure that's a approved decision.
Well, do you agree? Thank you.
I'm dying to present.
Yeah, right. Well, since we're all sitting up here worried that all the police officers are here, and so we're looking out and thinking, okay, who's watching over things around here? So anyway, this is really a very happy night from what could have been a very sad occasion. So we're just thrilled to be able to have our Sergeant Clark here tonight to receive this great, I guess it's a commendation or recognition. And it's very, very exciting for us to have our own wonderful sergeant honored in this way. And I will ask Chief Wu to please come up. Or do you want to stay there?
I'll stay here for a second, then I'll
Okay.
come up. First of all, good evening, Mayor Cooper and council members. It is with great pride that Sergeant Jeremy Clark is recognized for his actions that resulted in saving the life of a visitor to Belvedere. On February 25th, 2025, at approximately 5:30 p.m., Sergeant Clark was the only patrol personnel working day shift when he was dispatched for a report of a person down, unconscious, and not breathing. Even before being dispatched, Sergeant Clark had already noted a pending emergency medical call for service on the computer, and he preemptively started to head in that direction. Upon arrival, he quickly assessed that the victim was not breathing and had no pulse. He immediately administered CPR. This continued for several minutes until the arrival of medical personnel. They medically evaluated the victim and requested that he continued CPR. After several more minutes, the victim began to breathe and had a pulse. The person was transported to the hospital for further medical attention. The following day, Sergeant Clark took it upon himself to visit the patient and learned that a full recovery was expected. The two actions Sergeant Clark took that day undoubtedly saved the life of a person. His preemptive response that decreased emergency response time and his sustained CPR efforts. Sergeant Clark is to be commended and recognized for his life-saving actions. Sergeant Clark truly exemplified the professionalism of the Belvedere Police Department. And at this time, I'd like to invite Sergeant Clark to come up to receive the Belvedere Police Department's Life-Saving Award.
Oh, wow. Great.
I'd like to say one quick thing about the
No, go ahead.
I do not believe this job, I do not believe in coincidence. There's a reason why I'm standing right here today. And that's because of my wife, Cleopatra, back there. Almost 9 years ago, I suffered the same fate. I was out training and running. I went into cardiac arrest and she gave me CPR. That's why I'm standing.
Wow. Wow. Yes, thank you so much. We're so fortunate to have such quick thinking and prepared officers in Belvedere. I'm sure Tiburon as well. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Chief Jean, for showing up. That's really nice of you to do. Thanks so much. Okay, now, how about open comment on the commendation for Sergeant Clark? Okay, is there anyone on Zoom?
We have Dr. Rothman.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sure, go ahead.
We have a very, very special police force. And it upsets me when I begin to hear talk, or maybe the sheriff can take care of it, or we'll get somebody else to take care of it, or Tiburon will take care of it. In our police force, we have a treasure here, and we should recognize it. And we must come up with the funding so that they're not under strain. We now I've been spending on the consultants for the state planning $850,000 in 2 years. That spending is going to end if the plans that we have ever get accepted by the state, and I'm sure they will. And at that point, that money will be available for things like our very valuable and to be treasured police force. So I urge you to give priority to making sure that the funding is adequate. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. We agree with you.
There are no other hands raised.
Okay. In that case, I am going to turn this over to Councilmember Burke, who's going to give us the information on the results of a communication survey that was sent out to the community through the Belvedere Breeze e-newsletter.
Advance. Okay, great. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm here to present the results of a survey we just conducted. Just to give folks a little bit of context, in 23, the City Council identified communications with residents as a key initiative. At that time, a task force was created to assess communications and recommend improvements. I was on that task force, and one of the things that we did is we reached out to residents with a survey to solicit their input and to establish baseline perceptions. So how do people feel about the communications? And importantly, how do they think that we could improve them? As a result of that work in the fall of 23, We made changes to city communications, in particular to the city website, as well as the e-newsletter, which was branded Belvedere Breeze, to improve the residents' perceptions. So last month, we wanted to do a check to see how we were doing. So we sent out a survey with 15 questions asking residents to share information about the communications, and again, ask them for feedback on how we might do even better. Just to give you a little bit of a caveat, only 72 residents completed the survey. I mean, it is statistically somewhat significant given the size of our community. However, I would take all of these with a grain of salt in terms of them being more directional than really emphatic. With that in mind, let me go through the results. So one of the questions we asked is, oops, sorry. One of the first questions we asked is, where do people get news and information about Belvedere? So we could be sure that we were optimizing the channels that people are most comfortable with. And you can see the top 5 sources of information for news about Belvedere are the ARC, the Belvedere Breeze, Friends and Neighbors, and also the Belvedere website. All of the others sort of fall in much lower quartiles. But again, if we were going to optimize on things, we would focus on those top 4. We then asked residents to tell us again, we asked the same question in 23, how informed do they feel about the following topics? And in case you haven't spent a lot of time with research, oftentimes researchers use a metric top 2 box as a way of gauging whether or not they're making progress. And so top 2 box would be, in this case, someone says, yes, it's very, they feel very informed, or they feel mostly informed, whereas somewhat and not at all are the bottom 2 boxes. And so what we were able to see, if you look at community events and programs, is tremendous progress. Up at the top of that bar, you can see top 2 box versus 23. We raised that by 25 points. So a really significant increase in the number of people who said they felt that they were informed about community events and programs. And to go more quickly across the others, emergency alerts and road closures, we also saw a significant improvement at plus 29 points. City services available, people said they felt more informed about those by a plus of 18 points. Crime and public safety, a plus by 17 points. The last category, disaster and emergency preparedness, is a new category, so we don't have a baseline from 23, but we'll look at that on a going forward basis. 4 other categories that we asked the community about is volunteer opportunities. We saw a more modest increase there, plus 8 points versus 23. City council goals and actions, obviously this is one where we need to do more work. We actually saw a decline by 4 points versus 23. Capital improvement projects plus 13, and then budget information and priorities. And so overall, we feel very good about the progress we're making. There's certainly more to do, but we're headed in the right direction. We then next asked the residents, how would you rate overall communications from Belvedere across 4 different dimensions? Do you feel the communications are relevant, useful, timely, and transparent? Here we only have 3 boxes, very mostly / somewhat and not at all, due to a data issue we had with the middle 2 categories. Nonetheless, we were still able to see tremendous progress in the top box, very. So in the same format that I just shared with you on the previous slide, if you asked a resident, how would you rate overall communications from Belvedere in terms of being relevant, we saw a 32-point increase in those residents who would rate us as very relevant. In terms of useful, we saw a 29-point improvement on how residents would feel the communications were in terms of useful, plus 32 points in terms of timely, and then plus 17 points in terms of transparent. So again, really good progress that we feel good about, more to do, but it's moving in the right direction. We also asked residents which current issues or topics do they want to hear more about. There were really 4 or 5 that rose to the top. At the very top was residents want to hear more about emergency preparedness and safety, capital improvement projects, housing and development, traffic and parking, and then council updates and actions, which if you'll remember, that was one of the categories that went down by 4 points. Next, we asked the residents, how often do you visit the City of Belvedere website, to get a sense of how engaged and what kind of traffic that we're getting from the residents. What we found is that most people are visiting the website at 34% monthly, followed by 31% that are visiting only when they have a specific need. You'll see in a moment, most people are going there for things like planning and building. You don't always have a planning and building need, but when you do, you think to go to the city website, which is actually a good thing. For what reasons, as I was just saying, have you visited the city website? Top 4 or 5 are planning info, agenda minutes and video, so information about these meetings that we're in right now, information about elected officials, people who are on the commissions or committees. They are also interested in building information, as well as municipal codes and the regulations that would probably govern some of those first 2 categories. So moving on, we also asked how helpful and informative is this information on the city website. We don't have a baseline from 23, but we feel very good about this result. 37% said they felt the information on the website was very helpful and informative, and 40% said mostly. So top 2 box 77. Ideally, we would see more and more of that blue shift over to green. So that's work for us to do. We also asked residents, since it was new under its new brand, it's not that we didn't do email alerts before, but they were very infrequent and they weren't as curated as Belvedere Breeze. We asked them how often they read the Breeze. 50% said they always read it. 19% said they read it frequently, 14% occasionally, and 17% never. And so for the first year or so of the Breeze, we think that's really great at 69 or nearly 70%, top 2 box, but opportunities to continue to push that even higher. We also asked them how do they feel about the Breeze in terms of helpful and informative. And here again, like the website, we saw top 2 box up in the 70s. So here we're at 74% in terms of very or mostly helpful and informative. So we feel very good about that as well. Finally, we also gave residents the opportunity in question 5 and 15 to give us sort of just open-ended responses when we asked, well, what else could we do to better improve the communications between Belvedere and its residents? And to be honest, we got 72 responses. I took all of the responses and I put it into ChatGPT. And I asked ChatGPT to come back with the 5 top most popular themes with supporting information. And here's what it told me. I did go back and look at it and eyeballed it to make sure it seemed right. ChatGPT is better at it than I am. The first was improved communications and transparency. Residents want clear, more detailed updates with less PR style messaging. And when we say PR style, that's like sort of marketing or sort of putting a little bit of a spin on things, which is just give me the real facts. I just want to hear the data, as it says, more fact-based. And they'd also like, especially if we're using email and maybe even text, to get the news before it actually appears in the local media. The second was easier access to information. They'd love us to just sort of push things forward. I don't know if you remember, but when you get a notification about an upcoming meeting, you have to click that email, then you have to click and download or open the agenda. Then you can go to the link and get the information. They're like, why can't you just attach it as a PDF, which is actually a really good suggestion, or use something like a 311 style texting service. So again, they want things more immediate and more push to them versus having to go to the website. They also said they'd like expanded digital and media engagement. So they're suggesting that we use emails more often. Maybe we build an official social media page for the town and use that to communicate, something like Nextdoor, and also allowing journalists direct access to city officials. Although I do want a little caveat there is that really came up on the day that the ARC ran an article about this topic, and we saw 4 or 5 responses from that article. So again, take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. And the last 2 were emergency preparedness and infrastructure updates. Residents really emphasize this, that they want and need a well-communicated evacuation plan. They'd like timely updates on road closures, construction projects, and traffic concerns. And I know we might say, well, we think we're doing that, but this is, again, their perception. They'd like to have that even more timely, or they don't think it's timely enough. And the last was better enforcement of city regulations. There's a lot of feelings around stronger enforcement of parking ordinances and construction permits, as well as improved oversight over road and sidewalk maintenance. So those were the top 5 in the open-ended questions, sort of more qualitative feedback. And so what we're going to do with this as a next step is we'll use these results, we'll sit with city staff, and we'll build an action plan to go about continuing to optimize and improve city communications to see those scores continue to improve over time. Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions for Councilmember Burke? Wait. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comment? Anyone on Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, well, thank you. You obviously communicated beautifully, so no one had any questions for you. Well done. We're going to give you you get very high marks on that one, not a somewhat. Okay, so we have completed our presentations, and now it's time for the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of items that are considered to be non-controversial unless any item is specifically removed by any member of the council, staff, or public. The consent calendar will be adopted by one motion. Council will take public comment on all items on the consent calendar when the calendar is called. So do any council members have a question or want to pull one of the items?
Yes, I would like to pull 8C for just some clarifications.
Okay. 8C.
And Mayor
Yes,
Cooper, I
yeah.
would recommend that we pull item 8E related to the consulting agreement and continue that item in April.
Okay, that sounds great. So we're pulling 8E. Anyone else? Okay, then is there any public comment on the consent calendar?
No hands raised.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to adopt items 8A, 8B, and 8D?
So moved.
Second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Councilmember Carapiet?
So on 8C, I just have one comment or correction is on page 6.2 of the administrative policy. In the 6.1.05 purpose, we have the sentence that all elected officials and appointees are expected to attend all council and committee meetings. I think we should add the word commission, council, commission, and committee meetings, and change the word meeting to with an S so that it's multiple. And then the other slight edit I would like to suggest is on page 6.7, in the sentence that says, the intent of the planning commission to alternative positions is to provide experience depth in case of recusal or absences. First position, I'd like to strike first position. And to assist in the retraining and development of a first-time commissioner, I'd like to strike the second position. And I would also like to strike the word to and assist in the training and development of the first-time commissioners. My reasoning on that is that by designating one position for experience and another for a training, that going forward, it could hinder the way we want to handle the two alternatives. And by removing first and second position, it allows the council to have more flexibility in who they're choosing to use as a alternative
An alternate.
or an alternate.
Right. Okay.
I-
Do you have oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that makes sense. And just to clarify, I think you were saying, so strike out in parentheses, first position, in parentheses, second position. I'd also suggest the word and becomes and/or.
Okay.
That clarifies that intent so that the council has more flexibility to do both those things, but there's not the specific designation for the first or second position. I think that's a good suggestion.
Any other comments on this? Is there any public comment on this item? Anyone on Zoom?
Raised.
Okay. Do you feel that you have enough clarity for
Yes.
the corrections?
Yeah.
And is this something that, are these changes a problem? Would it have to come back again? Or we're okay going forward?
Mayor Cooper, it does not need to come back for council consideration, assuming it's
Okay.
approved.
Okay, great. Then in that case, can I have a motion to adopt item AC 8C as amended.
I make a motion to amend 8C as stated.
Second.
Thank you. And all those in favor?
Excuse me, just
Oh.
as a procedural matter, we need to take a roll
Right,
call.
Right,
given that
roll
Councilmember
call.
Marks
Sorry
and-
about that. Yep, I just remembered. Okay, so we need roll call.
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkinson, Mayor Cooper,
Yes.
Councilmember Carapiet,
Yes.
Councilmember Mark.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, with that, we are going to public hearings. And the first item 9A is a public hearing on the consideration of and possible decision on an appeal of the Planning Commissioner's approval of the project at 81 Belvedere Avenue. Do we have a staff report on this?
I'm first going to say that I
Oh,
am
right.
recused because I'm within 500 feet, so I'll hop outside.
And Councilmember Mark, you also?
Yeah, I'm recused, so I will turn off both my video and audio and leave the room while this happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, staff report.
Thank you, Mayor Cooper and council members. For your consideration this evening is an appeal of the Planning Commission decision made on January 21st, 2025, granting variance approval for the property located at 81 Belvedere Avenue. On January 21st, the Planning Commission considered design review, demolition permit, variance, and use permit applications to construct a new 4,834 square foot single-family residence with an attached garage, ADU, and ADU at 81 Belvedere Avenue. The project required a variance to allow the two-car garage and carport to exceed the 28-foot height limitation for structures within the first 40 feet from the street. The project requested a 29-foot, 10-inch tall garage and a 28-foot, 6-inch tall carport. In total, 86 square feet of the 945 square foot garage and carport roof exceeded the 28-foot height limitation, shown here shaded in green. The area where the height encroachment occurs is approximately 30 feet from the street's edge at Belvedere Avenue. The garage is proposed to have 9-foot tall ceiling and 1 foot 6-inch tall roof and is approximately 460 square feet in size. The roof would cantilever over the 170 square foot carport. For council's consideration, granting of a variance is appropriate only if the criteria under Municipal Code Section 1984-010 can be met. First, the granting of a variance will not constitute a special privilege and consistent with the limitations upon other properties in the vicinity. Second, there are special circumstances applicable to the property which would deprive the property of privileges enjoyed by other properties if the strict application of the zoning ordinance were applied. And third, the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or injurious to the property or owners of other premises. The appellant claims that granting a variance would be a special privilege and unique to the vicinity of the project, as previously approved variances are over half a mile away and distinguishable in other regards. Here, staff finds that granting of a variance will not constitute a special privilege because other residences have been granted variances to exceed the height limitations on Belvedere Island, including 14 Eucalyptus Road, which received a variance to exceed the allowable height limitation in 2016. The appellant claims that other neighbors were not impacted by previously approved projects. This is not accurate. At 455 Belvedere Avenue, residents voiced concerns related to view impacts from Park Lane. And at 443 Belvedere Avenue, residents voiced concerns regarding view impacts from Belvedere Avenue and Beach Road. The appellant claims that there is no evidence to support a special circumstance exists. They claim that 9-foot tall ceilings, 8-foot tall garage doors, cantilevered carport roofs, and a rainwater catchment system are luxury design choices, and that the owner can still have 3 parking spaces without the variance. The appellant also claims that there is nothing unique about the site to justify the variance, and that the slope is typical of Belvedere lots. Staff recommends that special circumstances are applicable to the site which drive the design. Firstly, the existing site slopes down toward the driveway. During heavy rains, water will collect into the driveway and the garage, which is below street level. To help alleviate the circumstance, the applicant proposes to elevate the finished floor and the garage's overall height to avoid drainage issues. Secondly, the steep terrain of the property constitutes a special circumstance, particularly at the left side of the parcel where the slope exceeds 70% at the area where the garage will be located. Other homes in the direct vicinity are generally sloped between 42 and 47%. The steep terrain limits the allowable height of the garage. If the applicant were to shift the building away from the street, its height would likely increase as the hillside steepens. Thirdly, the subject property is unusual in that it is one of the few triangular lots on Belvedere Island. The triangular shape of the lot reduces the buildable envelope from both side yards, making it more difficult to build a garage without requiring further encroachments into the rear or side yard setbacks. The garage exceeds the 28-foot height limitation by 1 foot and 10 inch. If the applicant were to reduce the 9-foot tall ceiling height by 1 foot, a variance would still be required. If the applicant removed the 1 foot 6 inch thick cantilevered roof, a variance would still be required. To meet the strict application of the zoning ordinance, the garage and its roof would need to be 8 foot 8 inches above the approved finished floor. Staff recommends that the strict application of this zoning ordinance would deprive the property of privileges enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity, as other properties have had garage ceilings and roofs which exceed 8 feet 8 inches in height. The appellant claims that the non-compliant garage will obstruct their view of Richardson Bay, devalue their property, and impair the quiet enjoyment of their home. Here, a photograph taken by staff during a site visit from the appellant's deck shows that a panoramic view of Mount Tamalpais, Sausalito, and the Golden Gate Bridge are not inhibited by the granting of the variance. Additionally, the appellant did not submit documentation to support their claim of a loss of value on the property. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt the resolutions denying the appeal and uphold the decision by the Planning Commission. The granting of the variance will not constitute a special privilege, as other properties have been granted height variances. Second, special circumstances, including the shape and topography of the property, deprive the property privileges enjoyed by others in the vicinity. And third, the variance would not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or injurious to other owners of other premises. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I did want to note that we received a letter later this afternoon from the appellant's architect, Michael Rex. And the letter offered what seemed to me to be design review suggestions. However, I just want to remind everyone, this is an appeal on a variance, and it's not an appeal on design review decisions that were made. Do we have any questions for staff? Councilmember Carapiet?
This might be more for our council. So can you go over an appeal options or decisions?
Give me 1 second. I will pull up the applicable provision of the code. Thank you for your patience. Okay, well, in any case, I can't pull up the exact provision of the code because it's taking a little bit of time, but the basic options are to grant the appeal, deny the appeal, remand, or modify.
Oh, so there's three choices.
Four.
Four. So approve, disapprove, deny, modify,
And
or,
remain.
Remand, which would be to
put it
send it,
back.
which would be to
Sending it-
send it back to the planning commission.
okay,
Okay.
all right. That's what I wanted to clarify, that we did have four choices.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember, Brooks? Okay. And I don't have any questions either. I did want to say that I visited 81 Belvedere Ave and reached out by email to the appellants on eucalyptus, but didn't hear back from owners. However, I have been to the home for another occasion, so I have been inside the home. I guess I do have a question for staff, sorry. In your report, you stated that the garage is 29 feet, 10 inches, which leads to the need for the variance. And again, just to clarify, it's due to the slope in the back. So the variance is only in the back of the garage. Is
That's
that
correct.
correct? I was a little confused because the green line went all around the whole garage as well as but I think it was just the shading, the triangular shape.
Yeah,
There's also a small corner of the carport in that green shading.
Okay,
So it's I think,
two
Sammy will pull it up.
areas.
yeah,
Okay,
it's two little areas or two areas in the back
okay,
that were the solid green.
right. But where it goes all the way around, you're not suggesting that the whole roof
No.
is the
Correct.
variance. Okay, okay. Okay. Thank you. And, okay. What is the height of the garage at the street? So the back is 2910, but what is it at the front edge?
let's see.
Was it 12
believe it was
something?
12.
12
If I
7?
remember correctly, it's 12, but we're pulling up the plans right
Okay,
now.
sorry. That number wasn't there.
– 12 feet 6 inches
12 6.
from grade to the top of the roof. Yeah.
Okay, 12 6. Okay. Thank you. Okay, no more questions. I don't think I do public comment yet, right? I just want to make sure. So I don't want anyone yelling at me again. So, okay. I would like to call up the appellants, whoever's here to speak on behalf of the owners of the 18 eucalyptus. 81, 18. I transposed the numbers.
Sammy?
And you have 10 minutes to speak to the council.
Good evening. My name is Anna Welch. I'm an attorney and I work with Elizabeth Breckus, who submitted the appeal. And I'm here representing Emily Poplowski and Justin Wickett, who are appealing the height variance granted to 81 Belvedere Avenue, specifically the 1 foot 10 inch variance over the 20 foot height limit of the project's garage structure. Just want to state for the record, the mayor mentioned that we were challenging more design review type issues. And so here's the criteria that we've been focusing on. This is the ordinance from the Belvedere Municipal Code. And tonight the city council reviews de novo, and they have to find that all of the following are true. That granting the variance won't be a special privilege, that the special circumstances are the cause of the need for the variance. There's an important kind of causal element in there. And that finally, the variance would not be detrimental to owners of other premises or the required enjoyment. At this point, we're going to patch in Michael Rex over Zoom, and he is going to talk to the issue of special circumstances and whether the special circumstances of slope and shape are what are requiring the variance or not.
Hello, I'm Michael Rex. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yes, thank you. I'd like to first speak to special circumstances. It's not the lot's slope or shape that causes the need for a variance, but simply design choices that have been made. They just want to build a bigger garage structure than the code allows. Wouldn't we all? Take a look at this photo. Those story poles and string lines are well over 3 feet above the existing garage. It demonstrates how excessive and unnecessary this height is along the street to park cars. A building of this size so close to the street harms the whole neighborhood. The way it looms and crowds this very narrow street. I mentioned that in my letter that there's some design changes that could easily be made, that should be made, so the variance is completely unnecessary. We're only talking about 1 foot 10 inches on a 3-story building that's almost 30 feet tall. They could simply lower the 9-foot ceiling in the garage 6 to 12 inches. Why do they need a roof that's 18 inches thick, thicker than the roof on the house? They could take at least 6 inches out of that unusually thick roof. They could shift the whole garage a couple feet to the south without encroaching into setbacks, which would lower the whole floor elevation of the entire structure a few inches. They could warp the driveway. They could put a trench drain against the building. Although I don't think they need to slope the driveway at all if they lower the floor area a few inches. I have to ask you, is a carport over a third parking space a right or a privilege? Is having a roof over your third parking space or not having a roof over your third parking space, is that a hardship? A third space that serves an ADU? So we could resolve this matter between neighbors. We've been seeking a dialogue and actually having a dialogue with the applicant's architect for about 2 weeks now. We've asked that they consider these simple changes, plus relocate the solar panels from the garage roof to the house roof where there's room, and cover those large skylights on the house with automatic shades that would close at night to reduce nighttime glare. I have to say, unfortunately, we've got not a single bit of offer in return. So tonight we're seeking your help to address this excessive structure. I want to conclude by simply asking you to ask you, why should Justin and Emily lose any amount of water view when the city bends its rules unnecessarily? Anna, back to you.
Right, and just to kind of draw a line under that, our contention is that it's not the steepness of the lot that's driving the need for a variance. It's kind of the cool extras that they added. A cover over their third parking space, a nice high ceiling in the garage that has nothing to do with the slope. That's kind of on the inside of the building. Water catchment system, which makes the roof thicker. Again, has nothing to do with the slope. And then also a cool design choice of having a cantilevered roof, which requires the thick beams, which again drives the thickness of the roof. So those are all elements that have absolutely nothing to do with slope. The chair of the planning commission agreed. She agreed that the roof of the garage could easily be lowered by a foot. And we have a neighbor named Claire Slaymaker, who is a former planning commissioner. And she also agreed that you could easily drop the height of the ceiling from 9 feet to 8 feet. And you have a garage that fit in with the neighborhood that served your needs and wouldn't require a variance or such a large variance. Now to the issue of special privilege. The variance here does grant a special privilege. Here, we've identified two different really types of special privilege, one related to height and one to width. So the height is, of course, the obvious that the 28-foot limit is exceeded, but also the width. It's a 3+ covered parking space, and that carport area that's in violation does block a very significant view to my client. The staff report highlighted the previous height variances that Belvedere has given out. And I think it's significant that in 50 years, they found 6. In 49 years, there were 3. And then all of a sudden there were 3 in 2024. And the staff report talks about neighbor complaints at 455 Belvedere Avenue and 443 Belvedere Avenue. As far as we can tell, 441 Belvedere Avenue had no complaints. 14 Eucalyptus Road, which is right down the street from our clients, had no complaints. We don't have any data on the last 2 from 2010 and 1975. But what I really wanted to highlight is about the complaints is when the neighbors made the complaints, the Planning Commission responded. They didn't just grant the variance as requested, they made modifications. So for 443 Belvedere Avenue, it was a complaint about bulk and mass, and they required landscaping to kind of break up the bulk and mass complaint for the neighbor. 455 Belvedere Avenue was a significant change. They requested, I think it looks like a 12-foot variance and got a 1-foot variance. So the precedent in Belvedere is that if there is an injury to the neighbor and the neighbor comes forward, the Planning Commission addresses it and makes a modification. And that's not what happened here. Our concerns really fell on deaf ears. You saw this already from your staff. Just notes that, we looked at the Planning Commission minutes and didn't see comments on some of these. And we'll use our last couple of minutes to turn it over to my client who can talk about the effect on his property and his enjoyment.
Thank you, Mayor Cooper and council members. My wife and I are the appellants. We are also the homeowners of 18 Eucalyptus Road. We're right above the property of our neighbors, the Fedders. First off, I just want to go on record by saying we totally support the Fedders in terms of building in accordance with the law. We think that this home has a lot of very positive qualities, and we are excited to welcome it into the community. That being said, Council Member Burke, you said it so well in your presentation just moments ago. When you guys have surveyed the community members want better enforcement of the city's regulations. And that's exactly what we're asking you guys to do here. Look, I'm not alone. There's 4 other nearby neighbors adjacent to this property. Myself, 2 licensed architects who've commented saying that this can be done without granting a variance. The other licensed architect is my neighbor, Elizabeth Mitchell. And just to advance the slide, Elizabeth Mitchell at 20 Eucalyptus Road, as a licensed architect, she believes that the garage height could be reduced by a foot and could be reduced further. And this is public record from the Planning Commission meeting. So I just wanted to say that the view, well, with regards to the Belvedere Code and in terms of adhering to code, the code calls something out that I think is really clear. It just says, if a variance is going to be detrimental to a neighbor's enjoyment of their premise, it's not even injurious, it's just enjoyment of premise, then the variance shouldn't be granted. And I, for the last 5 years with my wife, we enjoy waking up each morning, looking down at a pier on West Shore, a boat lift. It actually reminds me of my mom's house. She has a boat lift at her house. And we already lost part of our view of the Salesforce Tower, which also reminded me of my mom when 22 Eucalyptus did their project. My mom, Salesforce is special for our family. My mom was one of the founders of Salesforce. She was the founding investor of Salesforce. And so to lose this special view it is very concerning to me and our family, and it certainly would impact and be detrimental to our quiet enjoyment of our premise. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Okay, do we have any questions for the appellants?
Maybe one comment and one question. So one comment is I just want to clarify what the research said is that they wanted stricter enforcement of parking ordinances and construction permits. So not municipal code. They weren't talking about what we're talking about tonight, just to make a clear distinction. But I understand the point you were trying to make. And the second would be so when staff put up the photo of the view, is that an accurate representation, or that photo is accurate in terms of what would actually be impacted by? Could you put that back up?
Yeah, we have a photo in our presentation. Yeah.
Well, actually, I was asking for staff's. Oh, okay, put up yours, and then we'll look at staff's.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, so this impacts part of our view. And so I don't think that the photo that staff puts up showed the boat lift that we see so clearly on West Shore that we enjoy every morning from our dining room table. So that was a different vantage point. It was from our deck. That's not where we spend most of our time. I spend most of our time in the dining room, on the dining room table with our little girl looking out at, and we have to actually look in this direction because 20 Eucalyptus is so close to us. So we end up literally looking down and seeing this boat lift that is going to be, and it doesn't look like the slide's showing, but a boat lift that's going to get completely blocked by the additional height caused by the variance.
Yeah, can we get the screen up on? so
If
that
you
can
hit
see?
share screen, actually.
Share screen.
Yeah, so, yeah, perfect. There it is. Yeah, so I mean, here's a boat lift that's going to get blocked. That does give us a lot of joy. That reminds our family of my mom. Look, we're blessed with a very expansive, beautiful view, but this is a special part of our view, and it's something that we truly enjoy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, do you know how much that was zoomed in on? I mean, obviously it was zoomed in on quite a bit. Actually, staff, Sammy, could you put up, I mean, because maybe it's not the specific view, but at least it'll show us the scale to compare the zoom versus non-zoom.
It's actually not a zoom.
That's not a zoomed in photo?
Cropped, but it's not zoomed to be correct.
That wasn't enlarged.
Correct. That was taken on 50 millimeter.
So could you point out where it is? The boat dock is where?
And I would also further add, this is actually zoomed. This is zoomed out. This is taken on a 30 millimeter lens, a wide angle lens. And it's actually right in the middle.
Who took the
there.
picture?
I took that picture and I actually went out onto the deck, which runs parallel to their dining room table.
Yeah.
Because I thought it would help them because you were sort of closer to the story pole.
Where is the boat dock? Is it right there?
Yeah, whoever's pointing. Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is taken on an iPhone.
And just, I mean, for the record, Jane, you mentioned this as well. I've been in the house at 18 Eucalyptus and I went there today to get a sense of the distance and so forth. I was obviously at 81 as well, just so to get familiar with the project. Thank you.
I have a question for you. You say that view is when you're sitting at your dining room table. Do you have the same view when you're standing?
We see more obviously when we're standing up, yeah.
So, but when you're standing up, does the amount of view that you're claiming is blocked, is it reduced? Because you're standing and you're looking at, instead of being from this angle here, you're up here.
Yeah, we're gonna see more of the Fedder's extensive carports and when we're standing versus.
Okay, and then I want to, well, I guess that's a comment, so I won't ask that. Okay, that's it for now. If I think of anything else, I'll let you know. Staff, I have a question for you as a follow-up. Because the ADU is not within a half a mile of public transportation, it isn't required for them to have a third parking spot?
Correct.
So the third parking spot is not a luxury, it's a requirement?
Correct.
And did the ADU laws change regarding front setbacks recently? That we can no longer abide by the front setback of the zone, but rather it's reduced to that same 4 feet, or if not at all possible, no setback?
Correct.
Thank you.
And I also have a question for staff based on this presentation. If the carport roof were removed, would a variance still be required?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I didn't understand that the corner of the carport in the back also has a little triangle of in the variance. Was that square footage calculated with the 80 whatever square feet it was, or is it a little bit more?
Yes, the carport is included.
Okay, great, thank you.
89.
86, 89.
86.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Then can we have the applicants come up? And you also have 10 minutes for presentation.
Not ready? Do I need to do anything? I'm not.
Is the
using-
green light on the mic?
We do the full screen?
Maybe. I don't know how. Stephen, do you know how? Where's Sammy?
It's okay.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Let's see if the flip works. First?
Yeah, there you go. Arrows.
Up and down.
Up and down.
Okay.
Yeah, got it. Single, raise,
Okay.
2, 3, 4.
Can you hear me? Does this sound good? No? Yes. This one? Good? It is, the green light is on. Okay, excellent. Well, good evening, council members and neighbors. I am Melissa Fader, and I'm joined by my husband, Patrick Fader. And we're really grateful to have lived in Belvedere for over 12 years. And essentially, we are rebuilding the house that we love with a few modernizations. And one of the main differences is what we're discussing tonight. It is the new garage that has an ADU underneath it in lieu of the existing storage space. And not only is that ADU something that our town needs, it is also something we're all a part of this fragile housing ecosystem. And as I mentioned during our planning committee approval process, I was on the board of our ranch recreation department for 8 years, and it was not lost on me that so many of our staff that come here to Belvedere to care for our community travel from quite far away because of our housing shortages. So I'd also like to note that the same garage and ADU was approved by the planning committee back in 2018. And it's worth noting that the neighbors that lived in the house where Justin and Emily now reside today wrote a note of support for that project back in 2018, and that's on file. This project and the same ADU and garage was approved again in the January planning committee meeting, and our neighbors that are more directly behind us in 16 Eucalyptus wrote a note of approval for the project as well. Now, I'll allow our architect to just provide all of the rest of the design details and answer questions, but I would like to underscore that the reason the variance exists is not because of luxurious design choices. Our design choices are very much in line with what exists on Belvedere Avenue, Eucalyptus Avenue, and the rest of Belvedere. It's very much driven by the steepness of our lot, which in many places is almost 2 times the steepness of the surrounded areas. So thank you for listening, and I'm going to hand it over to Stephen.
Hello, my name is Stephen Sutro, and I'm the architect for the project. Thank you to the staff for preparing such a great presentation and for your help with the project. The principle behind the design of the house was to place it in the same position as the existing house and to keep it low. This keeps the bulk of the building out of sight from the Belvedere roadway and from neighboring properties uphill. We wanted to integrate the new structures into the hillside to reduce their visual impact. So this slide here shows that the main house is minimally visible from Belvedere Avenue, and it shows how the carport is proportionate to its surroundings. The proposed garage is situated in a similar location to the existing carport. The floor level is aligned with Belvedere to avoid a negative slope, as staff pointed out, into the garage so that flooding does not occur. I want to point out that the height of the design at the front is 12.6 at its highest point as the roadway slopes away, but at the uphill side, it is 10.6. We've done structural studies to ensure as much openness towards the views with a cantilevered roof for the carport is possible rather than adding vertical support. And this keeps the view as a pedestrian from Belvedere open as you pass by that particular feature. So we think that it's better to have 4 extra inches of height in the structure than to have columns. That was our trade-off in choice. So as staff pointed out, it's only the rear triangle of the roof that requires a variance. The height of the building at the street does not require a variance. So this is a cross section through both the ADU and the garage. And here's where the steepness of the site comes into play. So the height limit is the dotted orange line there. And you can see that the orange line is very tall at the street and rapidly descends with the 70% slope of the land right there. And so if we were on a slope of 35%, just as a what if, many of the hillsides in Belvedere are approximately 35 or 40% steep, then the carport would be allowed to be as high as the red line at the top of this diagram. And so it's because the hillside slopes away so dramatically that the dotted line of the height limit eclipses or crosses by the rear of the garage. So if a variance request, if the findings were not made originally at the Planning Commission meeting, we would have adjusted the roof slope. We would not have changed the front elevation of this design. And if we're so told by this body to go back and make it so that we do not require a variance, we will sculpt the garage roof in a different way, but it will not change the appearance of the garage from the front or as seen from above. So it's really that back corner, and that's a direct result of a hardship that this lot faces because of its steepness. Staff already went through this, so I won't belabor it, but it shows that we have a very steep lot surrounded by lots that are not quite so steep. This is a map that shows tall garages where they have been permitted. Here are some photographs of tall garages in the surrounding area. And then this, I think, is the most important thing. If we're going to focus on what is injurious to neighbors and to make that finding, this was the original photo submitted by the neighbor on the right-hand side. So we didn't change this photo at all. The circle, I think, comes from them, the purple circle. And you can see where the flags are subtly visible within the center of the purple circle. The photo on the left was taken by a member of the planning staff when they visited the site. I'm going to leave it to Tom Tunney here to discuss a little bit about the specifics of the variance. Thank you.
Thank you. As Stephen mentioned, Tom Tunney, I'm counsel for the Faders. I promise to keep this brief. I know you've heard a lot. Some of it may be a little repetitive. If you forgive me, I'm going to be even more repetitive here. In concluding, would just like to leave you once more with the legal standards for the variance and how they've been met. 3 standards under the city code. The first one being that this is not a special privilege. We've shown that there have been a number of height variances granted. Appellant's counsel suggested that the height was a special privilege, and that just can't be the case. If it were, then there would be no height variances. Special circumstances, I think that's been made clear. The steepness of the slope is a crucial one, but also the dimensions, the shape of the lot. And then thirdly, as appellants themselves have pointed out, and I would ask you to look closely at the language of that third factor, not detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, injurious to the property or improvements of owners or neighbors, other premises, or to the quiet enjoyment of their premises. Lastly, California courts have reviewed variances and variances under appeal, and they provide direction how you should be considering these factors in the big picture. Standards for granting variances, and I quote, must be sufficiently broad and flexible to provide municipalities with the necessary discretion to address a wide variety of circumstances. I think in this case, the granting of the variance is supported by the facts. Thank you. I think that's the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Have any questions for? Oh, all right. Well, ladies first.
Yes, Kevin is a gentleman.
Yes.
So I have questions. You said that you could change the slope of the roof line and get rid of the variance. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
I would need the slide back up to help show that, but it's the rear corner of the roof only, and it would yield, I think, a less desirable outcome for the applicant in that the rear of the garage ceiling would slope slightly, and the roof could not be uniform across its dimension. It would have to tilt down at the back, but it certainly then would conform literally to the law, and we would not have required a variance. But this went through Planning Commission twice and was approved in this way. And so there was at the first meeting no suggestion that there was a problem. And the occupant of this house wrote a letter of support in that prior application process. So yes, but there was no direction from staff or the process to change the roof such as that, because it was thought that the variance was a good use of the variance tool, because we had a weird circumstance that kind of clipped the rear corner of the garage.
And then my other question is that could it possibly be one of the reasons you didn't use columns like you had in your 2018 design is because it added to your FAR and you would have to get a second variance for floor area exception?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to. I'll ask.
There were no columns in 2018. It always cantilever. The second variance was to encroach into the side yard setback. And so when they came back this time,
Oh, okay.
we had them pull it out. We
Yes.
recommended against a lot of variances. And so they pulled it out of that side yard setback.
Okay. And then I keep hearing about this rain catch-all. I asked Sammy and he gave me an answer and I still don't understand what the big thing about a rain catch-all is.
Well, the idea to catch rain to use for irrigation.
Oh, right.
Right, but
So how does it do on the roof?
I don't think that the rain catchment as a feature would not add to the thickness of the structure.
Okay.
And so I don't think that that's germane to the discussion
Oh,
tonight.
okay. That,
Yeah.
I just couldn't see on the plans where it was like sticking up or sticking out.
No,
or-
that's exactly
Right,
right. No,
okay.
it just means that the drainage would be directed. But it doesn't increase, the thickness of the roof is dictated by the structure of the span across the garage itself, and then to cantilever over the area of the carport. And so asking our engineer if we added columns instead of the cantilever, it would take approximately 4 inches out of the thickness of the structure of the roof. And then on top of that structure, it's sloped to drain to a couple drains. And that would have to happen whether there be a catchment system
Right.
or not. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I may, but was when the planning commission approved this, was it with conditions?
There were conditions on the approval, yes.
Can you let me know what they are? I just want to know if they're connected to the part of that built, the garage essentially.
No.
Like screening or landscaping, were any of those things?
No.
There was landscaping against that side of the garage towards Claire Staymaker's house.
Towards
I
one-
went and looked at the minutes. There was really no discussion about the two variances.
So so there was a condition of landscaping or screening for Belvedere Way.
Mhm.
And can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing to address that? I mean, I went to the site twice today. The second time I went down to Belvedere Way to see it from that perspective. And there's a lot of trees there now, but what are staying, what are going? And then what would be the ultimate screening that?
Yeah, the plan is that all the acacias that are along Belvedere Way will stay. Only acacias that are to the left of the carport or of the current structure where the carport will be, those acacias will be removed. And I believe there are 2 new trees that will be planted in that space. I'd have to look at the landscape plan again to see. I believe it was either a pistache or an oak.
We're trying to match the landscaping in the corner that is the city's corner, and we're just trying to blend it right into our property. We don't have fences, so we actually are adding more trees than we are removing.
And that is specifically conditioned in the approval.
Yes, the landscape plan has to come back to the planning commission chair and
Okay,
staff.
all right, cool. And I think, Stephen, you answered my question of why does the roof need to be so thick? So it's really about the cantilever structure is that's dictating the size. Okay. And yeah, I guess maybe, I mean, just since we're all here enjoying ourselves, is if you were to reduce it by a foot, 1.6 inches, like what would be the consequence of reducing the height of the building? You're saying actually you wouldn't do that, you would just actually slope down the roof.
If the direction, if we've been approved from a design review standpoint and we found that the variance findings could not be made, we would probably just torture the roof.
Just slope the roof.
Yes. If the direction was to.
You don't need to answer that question then, because I mean, you just told me what you would do if it weren't.
Yeah, but if the direction were to shave 6 inches off of it, we could say, we'll make the garage door 3 inches less and make the height inside, we would tinker with that. We weren't instructed to do that at any point along the process.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But even if you, other than sloping off the back of the roof line, even if you had the post or you did a 6-inch reduction, you would still have a certain amount of variance left.
That's correct.
So
We'd have
you
to
would
use
still
some.
need a variance. It would just be
Correct. The short
less.
answer to that is absolutely yes.
Yeah.
We'd have to use all the tools and we would still need a small variance for the very right corner. It's not 86 feet, by the way. It's about 62. We erroneously included the eave, which is exempt from the height limit,
Okay.
just in terms of an
You
area
include-
calculation.
You included what? That was.
We
exempt?
included the area of the eave, I think, in the
Oh, the
corner
eave.
of the triangle painted green in the exhibit. And since have deducted the eave just from our mental math.
And that's consistent with staff's opinion?
Yes.
Okay. So it would be roughly 62 square feet instead of 86.
Yes, and just a point, if there was a post, then it would require, that would count as floor area and have to go back to planning commission.
So can we clarify something here? So we're giving the variant, they've been given a variance by planning. And so is the question, did they have the right to the variance because they have unusual circumstances to their lot? And that is what we're being asked to judge versus us getting in this minutia of actually design review on the garage. So
Correct. Yes,
so
those findings have to be
our
made.
going down this road is not part of what we're being asked tonight. We're just asked, do they have?
Yeah, so if I may, Councilmember
Yeah.
Carapiet, I guess from my perspective, perhaps a layman's non-planning commissioner perspective, I did find a lot of your questions relevant to the variance and sort of exploring to the extent the variance could be slightly tweaked or modified. That's where I understood some of the line of questionings to go. And so I do think so far, I think that this has all been relevant to the question presented tonight.
So it's all relevant to whether they should have a variance or not.
Right, but to be clear, what is before the council tonight is just the variance, not design review. But I heard a lot of your design questions going to the extent of the variance required or needed
Okay.
as proposed. At least that is my interpretation.
I had one question. When I visited the property, I noticed that the current garage is at quite a slope down. And so I know when we saw the picture of the flags, they looked like dramatically higher, but actually you're going to be making the, which straight out from the street, which would then bring up the whole building in a way naturally, which would kind of fill into where those flags are.
I think that is exactly what's contributing to people feeling like it's a bigger structure than it is. I think that the subjective change of it, but when you actually measure leveling off to the street and then the garage size is very in line with every other garage on that street.
Okay.
People are reacting to the change because the garage.
Because the
currently
garage
slopes
deeps down,
and we will
dips
level
down.
it to the street. And I
Okay.
understand that, but that's.
Yeah, visually it's,
Yeah, that's what
you have to really look at it carefully to see what's going on there. Okay. I don't think I have any more questions on this. So I'll open this up to the public. Is there anyone here who has a question or would like to make a comment on this appeal? Is there anyone on Zoom?
Mayor Cooper, there are no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm going to call rebuttal now. So the appellant team, you are invited to come up for 5 minutes for rebuttal. I swear I followed it. Honest, I followed it finally.
Pull up my slides again. Could we pull up the slides again?
Is this yours?
I think this.
The wicket,
presentation is
right?
ours. Yeah, right here.
Okay. Let's go back to Zoom. Expand. Wicket, there you are. And go there. And then just wait a minute. Yeah, but that's not, yeah, I thought I did. There you go. Oh, wait. There you go.
I'll actually just jump back to the view photo. And again, to be clear, the other photos that were submitted were zoomed out photos taken from an iPhone. The iPhone lens doesn't reflect what a human eye sees. 50mm lens does represent what a human eye sees. So this is a correct photo that's not been zoomed out. I just want to stress the variance. The issue that we have with the variance is
Can you use the mic, Justin? Sorry,
Oh,
or the
sorry about
people on
that.
Zoom
I'm
can't
so
hear
sorry.
you.
Yep. The issue with the variance is that what we're talking about, our issue is the corners where the variance occurs are exactly what blocks the view that we enjoy. So what we heard from the architect, Stephen Sutro, is he can indeed slope the roof. And from my perspective, I mean, if you can, then why don't you? To be able to make the variance findings, it's only if there are special circumstances that truly prevent any other option from being granted. So if you can really slope that roof, if that is actually possible, and I asked the Fedders tonight, if you guys would be open to that, that solves our problem, because then we get to look out, we get to enjoy the property. And I speak on behalf of other neighbors who have expressed concern. Claire and Rob Slaymaker, who asked that the garage be reduced. The neighbor at 20 Eucalyptus Road, who is Elizabeth Mitchell, who, as a licensed architect, said she thought that the garage could be further reduced in size and structure. And to hear from their architect that it is indeed possible to reduce the garage, I mean, that to me it's great. That's the first time I'm hearing this. I'm glad that we all are aligned that a variance actually is not necessary in this case, and that they can enjoy their home and not disrupt our quiet enjoyment of our premise as neighbors. So I was delighted to hear that, and I just wanted to say, I mean, our asks coming tonight were the extent to which they could eliminate the carport roof. I appreciate ADU should have parking, but you don't need to have a roof over the carport. So if you could remove the cantilevered roof, so you don't need a variance, great. If they can slope that roof such that there are no variances, we could support that as well. We've been trying to get in contact and have these requests to eliminate the variance met for the last 2 weeks. I learned a whole lot about variances and Belvedere Municipal Code and California law in that process. But we're all about just removing the variance so that a view that we enjoy is not blocked, and we can continue in our quiet enjoyment of the premise. And then the other ask that we have is to move solar panels to the main house. And the Fedders were very generous in terms of being open to that in the past. I hope that they continue to maintain that posture. And I just wanted to echo what the chair of the Planning Commission said, which she too thought that the height of the garage could be reduced by at least a foot. So thank you. Anything else to add?
Yeah, just to the issue of, I also was delighted to hear that they can slope the roof and they wouldn't need a variance. And the question is, if you can, do you have to? And there is case law that answers that question, and the answer is yes. City of San Marino versus Archdiocese of Los Angeles. There was a church that had zoning. Half their property was residential, half was commercial. They wanted to build their rectory on the commercial side. The court said, I get that that's more desirable. You want that, but there is a minimum that you're entitled to. You're entitled to have a residence, and you can do it without a variance if you just put it on the residential side. So you're not entitled to the highest, best, what you would love. If you can do it without a variance, that's the test.
So
Michael, would you have anything to add? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, you have a minute. Go ahead. Are you done?
No, Michael, do you have anything? Michael Rex, do you have anything you'd like to add? You're on mute currently with regards to their architect's comments.
Yes, I'd like to add that I've been an architect for over 40 years. I studied these plans carefully, and the variance is not needed. It's a privilege to have a carport roof. You don't need 9-foot ceilings in an ADU or in a garage. There's no reason in the world to have an 18-inch thick roof. In fact, the carport, you could put columns on it. You could expose the beams that cause the cantilever. These are design choices that are creating this variance, and they're unnecessary, and it results in an excessively large garage on the street and for all the neighbors. Thank you.
And last point is, we're not the last property owners. We I appreciate that the last property owners wrote a letter of support. They're not us. We have something that that is detrimental to our quiet enjoyment, and per Belvedere Municipal Code, a variance should not be granted if a neighbor has issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I do have a question for you. You do understand that if it's the council's decision to have them slope off the back of the roof line, it's not changing the height of anything but the back of the garage.
The back of their garage blocks the view that we enjoy.
And there is going to be a overhang over the carport.
The carport also impedes the view as we enjoy it.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Thank you. Thank you again. There's two variances here, a variance with regards to the carport and a variance with regards to the garage. If both of those can be sloped such that the variances are not required, we would be able to preserve a little bit more of our view that we risk losing, and we would really appreciate that.
Okay, but you do understand it's just the back that's going to slope down.
It's the back part that blocks our view. So
And the
I do
carport overhang is
completely-
going to be there. I just don't want you to misunderstand what some of our choices could be.
I thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, again, we're excited about the Fetters building. We'd love to develop more of a relationship with them. We're not opposed to them building in accordance with the law. We would like to be able to maintain the quiet enjoyment of our premise, and ideally a variance is not, I mean, what I'm hearing today, what I'm learning now from the Fetters architect is there could be a design that doesn't include a variance. And if they want to continue to have a cantilevered carport, that's something that I think that we could be comfortable with, if that's something that's really critical to them.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions? Okay, thank you. And the applicant team now has 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
Thank you. I think your question is great, because the question points out that if the back is angled, that what was represented in their cropped or zoomed or whatever it is, it's clear that that doesn't represent the naked eye. But whatever is represented there will still be blocked to the fullest, right? It will not change that at all. Anyone can see that mathematically, right? Just kind of intuitively, you can see that the angle through will not change at all. And it's disingenuous to say that we have not engaged in any discussions with Michael Rex or with him as a representation of this owner. We have, and I've mentioned, he said, if you can bring it down the whole thing by the 1'10", then we would be happy with this. Well, to do that, we would have to lower it below the elevation of the street and invite water into the garage, and lower the structure beyond standards that are found in the surrounding area of garages. And so I think that the angling of the rear will serve nobody. It will make for an unattractive structure when it's viewed from the rear. That might only be the birds, but it's an odd choice, and it will not change at all the effect of this structure from this neighboring property. Let's see, I don't think we have anything else.
No, I just wanted to add that in the spirit of collaboration, we did collaborate with our neighbors, because their original concern, their concerns have migrated a few times. Their original concern was they did not want to see a man-made structure.
And so we assured them that our design choices would look very much like tree bark with natural stones on top, and we did not need to put solar panels in their view line. Like we heard you on that, and we intend to maintain that. It was news to us at the planning approval meeting that they actually thought that they should pick which man-made structure they saw, and that was the precedent that we might be setting as a town. So we have reached out. I think we have collaborated. And I'm also concerned about the precedents as we set for our town and our city, because I do feel like we have followed reasonable design choices. And the reason why we have the roof cantilevered for the carport is to keep that space absolutely as open as possible when you walk by. So, which is things that we enjoy as neighbors in Belvedere. And so anyways, we have replied. There was multiple comments that we had not replied or engaged, and we very much have.
And I want to say that I've talked to Michael Rex on the phone about 4 times or 5 times in the last 2 weeks about this. And he reiterated the point that they wanted the overall structure lowered by 110. And so it's, and I mentioned to him several times that we could torture the roof at the rear and meet the not having a requirement for a variance. And that's not an acceptable solution from their perspective. And so it's to say that they're first learning about this tonight and that's music to their ears is not consistent with the dialogue that I've had with Michael over the past couple weeks. And so it wouldn't solve anything from my perspective, and it would create the inside of the garage would be sloped at the rear. Patrick is shuddering thinking about that, and the roof would be odd. So I just don't think that that's a great solution here.
Okay, you still have a little time. Did you want to use it or you're okay? Okay, thank you. It off. I had one question for the architect. I'm kind of a visual person, so if you're saying the roof is this, and you would do this, or you would do this?
That.
Okay, okay, so you would just do this.
A folded plane at the back, kind of like a little kink.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're saying it would come down a foot and 9 inches? Yeah.
It would match that orange dotted line.
Okay.
Right. Just because. Sure.
I didn't get that whole drawing.
And
All of us. Which dotted line are we supposed to look at?
No.
I wish we had those arrows, things that you could, like a laser thing or something. Yeah, a pointer. Yes, we do.
She did.
Here.
Oh, Janae just did.
Oh, July share.
So she's now controlling it. So you're gonna have to ask her to.
That's fine. If she wants to
Okay,
change it.
okay.
And Rebecca, I'm going to also be asking for you guys to bring up that green shaded thing again, if you want to get ready.
We can bring that up too in the previous slide after you're done looking at this
okay.
one.
Okay, great.
So again, the height limit is that orange dotted line. And so it is 28 feet high above the grade, sloping down with the grade for the first 40 feet of the lot depth. And then it jumps up to 36 feet.
But Stephen, what this doesn't show, this is from the carport side. So this shows the corner of the carport.
It's through the garage, but where it's less, so, I mean, it's diagonal as well. So it's
Yeah.
3-dimensional. It's clipping more of the corner at one side of the garage and less at the other. And so
And
if we
it's-
go, Janai, you can flip to the next slide. There's the, you can see if we exclude the eave, there's how much of the carport requires the variance. If you can see that really small triangle at the left side there where the
Yeah.
cursor is. And the part of,
Okay.
and the part of the garage roof that requires the variance, because it's projecting into that plane that is sloping down the hillside are both gray triangles.
How would, or would, yeah,
Yeah.
the big one, yeah.
Yeah.
How would or would it, if you did that tilt, would
Yeah.
that have an impact on the ADU below?
Would it have it? No, it would severely impact the height of the interior of the garage.
Oh, the interior, right, okay. Oh, okay.
To stay below the line and then.
That.
I mean, this isn't exact. Then this is a depth. I'm here all day.
Origami.
Where's the tip
Origami.
That's essentially what you're saying.
Exactly right. Exactly right. No, you modeled, that's a model of the carport and the garage right there. That's right.
So it would
Okay, I'm
be
sorry.
a weird element.
It would be a weird element. It would hurt the inside of the garage functionally, and I don't think that anyone would benefit.
Right, I mean,
I think that the exhibit
no, I
from the
know.
neighbor shows
Yeah.
how
Hard
the
to-
front edge is the limiting.
if this were way down there, I,
See, I don't think it's going to help the view.
No, I think
Okay,
that,
thanks.
yeah, the exhibits show that the string at the front edge would be the limiting factor or the dominant factor in the view shed.
okay, thank you. Okay, so unless there are any other questions for the applicant, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring the item back to the council for deliberation. So we are to be reviewing the requirements for a variance. So who would like to begin? Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time and energy that you put into this, both from the appellant side and also the applicant side. First, I do want to thank staff and all of the hard work that you've put into this. I know it does require a lot of work. And also thank you to the Planning Commission because they've also had to deal with this already. You know, for me, I just don't like variances. I just don't like them. I wish we never had to have them. If Belvedere were flat, we probably wouldn't need them as much. Although you'd be able to build that garage to 28 feet if your lot were flat. But that said, we're not a flat island, actually, fortunately, and that gives us lots of great views, which I know a lot of us really care deeply about. I do personally. I understand your passion for that view. I totally get it, and I don't like when anyone messes with my view either. So I can totally put myself in your shoes. That said, I think, you know, what we have to do is sort of find a balance. You have to use judgment because nothing in the code actually specifically deals with this particular situation. It gives us general guidelines that we have to use to guide our decision-making. And so what we need to do is look for balance and to find something that we believe is fair, that allows the applicant to enjoy the property that they envision while also allowing the appellant to continue to enjoy the property that they love so much. So with all of that said, I mean, when I look at it and I try to balance things, I think the thing that was most helpful for me is one, the photo that the appellant submitted that was reflected in the Sutro presentation, and then also staff's chart, which showed the green shading, and also it was reflected in the Sutro presentation as well, because it's like, what are we actually talking about? Like, what are the consequences of this 12.6 or 12.5 garage being built? And for me, I mean, when I look at the three things that we are supposed to use to guide our decision as to whether or not a variance would be appropriate, I don't think this variance, or I don't think this would grant a special privilege. I spent 2 years on the planning department or the planning commission, and I most recently were involved in 441 and 443. And so I know that we've been through this before. I know when we've looked at variances of such a small proportion, in this case, it's only 62 square feet that would apply. We've granted those types of variances before, so I don't think this requires a special privilege at all. I do think it's a special circumstance. I think as the architect showed with that chart, I mean, if the lot weren't 70 degrees in slope, we wouldn't have this issue. If it was 40 degrees, it would be a much different story. In fact, you could probably even build the garage taller. And so I think this lot, not only in terms of the grade, but also in terms of the shape, makes it very unique. And I think in that case, I do feel that there's a special circumstance that applies here. And the last, I mean, because of what I just said about what was shown in terms of, you know, what would really be the impact of this little slice, the 62 square feet of structure that was being built very, very far down the hill, in my opinion, based on what I've seen. I don't think that it would be detrimental to the quiet enjoyment of the premises. And so for me, I certainly can make the findings to support the variance. And so therefore I would reject the appeal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I want to state that I visited the project at 81 Belvedere. And I reached out to the appellants and asked to come see so I could see the view myself in order to make my personal judgment. I think that the Planning Commission looked at the circumstances, came to a decision. And at the time, there was no movement for the ability to change the height. I think the description that Mr. Sutro did on what that drop-off would look like and the benefit that would be achieved by affecting the design, because I spent 10 years on planning. And I can say that I've learned from very experienced prior commissioners that the design sometimes is what drives what makes this community so great. And I think if we have these little airplane drop-offs, that the design, everyone will look at it and go, well, that's such a weird design. And, you know, why did the Planning Commission allow that kind of weird drop-off for only 60 some odd square feet? And so I think that the drop-off of the roof line to get out of the variance is not a good design decision, which is not what we're asking to do, but it comes into the factor that I also believe that granting this variance is not a special privilege. I have also been on a majority of those projects that were named, and most of them did get variances, but they were very small, like Council Member Burke said, you know, they're minuscule when you look at the total area that you're talking about. And I don't think that, and I think that they do have special circumstances. I think a 70% drop-off is probably one of the steepest drop-offs I've heard of in my experience. And I don't think that the variance is detrimental to public health or safety or welfare or injurious to other property owners. I mean, the garage from the street looks like a 12.5-foot garage, which is quite normal to see a garage of that height on the island. And I also want to say that the reference to having approval in 2018 isn't really relevant to this project because it didn't proceed forward. And what we're asked to be looking at is just what's presented today. And so based on all of the factors that I need to consider, I would deny the appeal.
Okay, thank you. Well, I have no experience serving on the Planning Commission. So I don't bring that history at all. I also have a hard time with variances because we do have codes for a reason, and I think everyone in the staff and on the city council tries hard to keep to the codes that we have as best we can. From the small experience I've had with attending planning commission meetings and then dealing with appeals that come here, I guess I'd say fortunately, the amount of variances that I've witnessed and been a part of have been relatively small. And to me, this is also a small one. I don't particularly like, I know our code says that we compare to other houses, other homes. I don't really like that we're comparing to other homes because I think then where are you in a community? If you're always saying, well, this one has a variance, that one has a variance, that one has a variance, so everybody gets a variance. I don't really like that. And I don't know if there's a way to change our code at some point. So we stated a different way. But to me, it's whether this particular property is getting a special privilege, not that it's compared to all these other homes. So, and I would say, I don't think they are. I think your helpful little model here, it's hard for me to imagine that if this were way out in the other end of this building, which is how far away it is, I really don't think that you're going to be able to see a little teeny dock right in that one spot. I just think that's hard to imagine. I think there are special circumstances. This lot not only has that severe drop off, but it also has the issue with being a triangular lot, which creates a lot of difficulty placing the home, the ADU, and the garage. And I also don't believe that the variance would be detrimental to anyone's health, safety, or welfare. I don't think it meets that at all. I don't think you'll hear anything from the garage at all. And I guess I'd like to say that dealing with all of these, I know the staff here has heard me say this all the time, but dealing with these appeals, I'm glad people can take advantage of them, but I want everyone to understand that we don't treat these lightly. The planning department puts an awful lot of work into them. Our planning commission spends a lot of time analyzing everything. And the three of us here have spent, I promise you, countless hours determining all the criteria that needs to be met. I know we've all reviewed the January meeting, we've read staff reports, we've read and thought about all the submitted materials from the different architects and lawyers. We've analyzed the drawings, even though that's not my forte, I try. And I just hope that feelings aren't hurt for too long. These are really, really hard decisions for the applicants. They're hard for the appellants. They're hard for all of us up here. And we are all neighbors, so I'm hoping we can move forward with this. But I also would deny the appeal. So do we have a motion?
I'll move that the city council adopt the resolution denying the appeal and uphold the planning commission's approval of a variance for the property located at 81 Belvedere Avenue.
Second.
Is this roll call or all in favor?
It's still roll call for now.
Okay,
Mayor.
still
Thank
roll
you.
call.
All in favor? Aye.
No, it's roll call.
Oh, it's roll-
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Mayor Cooper,
Yes,
Councilmember Carapiet.
Twice.
okay, thank you. Okay, at this point, we will move on to item 9B. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We're going to have an introduction to authorize a contract amendment between the City of Belvedere and the California Public Employees Retirement System regarding employee retirement benefits and first reading of an ordinance amending the Belvedere Municipal Code, chapter 2.36.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cooper. As part of Belvedere's negotiated salary and benefits MOU with the Police Officers Association and all other staff, it was agreed that a 10% pay increase would be phased in over a 3-year period starting in 2023. In exchange, it was also agreed that CalPERS members who were categorized as classic would contribute to a greater share of their salary towards their CalPERS monthly payments, which would kick in at the start of the 3rd year, along with the scheduled cost of living update. This change was a goal of the Pension Reform Subcommittee that met in 2021, and among other things, established the Section 115 Trust. Those employees hired before January 1st, 2013 are defined as classic. Those hired after January 1st, 2013 are considered new employees that fall under the Public Employees Pension Reform Act, or PEPRA. The entitlement benefits for the classic and PEPRA groups differ. Again, for this item, we're only addressing the classic members' contributions. For classic members in City Hall and Public Works, their contributions would increase by 1% from 7% as it stands currently to 8%. For classic members in the PD, their contributions would increase from 9% to 12%. Notably, there are currently no classic members in the police department. To make this change, CalPERS requires the council to adopt a resolution amending our Belvedere Municipal Code, Section 2.36, regarding our city's pension arrangements. Following council's approval of this resolution, CalPERS will reach out to the classic members and conduct an informal ballot vote to make the change permanent. The change will take effect on July 1st of this year. Tonight, we're asking for your approval to conduct a public hearing, adopt the resolution of intention, and approve the first reading of the ordinance amendment. And myself and Helga are available for questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions regarding this item?
I have one.
Okay.
You have 0 classics in the police department. How many classics do you have in miscellaneous then?
In miscellaneous, it's a total of 6 spread between City Hall and Public Works.
Okay. And how many are in PEPRA?
The remainder.
How many employees do
Should
we
be
have? So
12. Yeah.
So 6, you're balanced. Okay. Thank you.
12 in PEPRA and 6 in classic.
12 in PEPRA. There's
Yeah.
a total of 20.
Double PEPRA. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? No? Yes? No? Peter? Anything? No? Okay. It's my understanding that this has already been discussed and agreed upon, and you're just bringing it.
Yeah, this is a process requirement by CalPERS to go ahead and memorialize those changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Are there any questions from the public on this item? Any on Zoom? Okay. Then I'll bring it back. Do we have any discussion or
No,
comments?
I'll just make a comment that I'm very pleased that this is coming forward. When we did the pension reforms, it was in collaboration with staff, and obviously the city with taxpayers' money is making a really a significant effort to fund pensions. So we're contributing a lot from the taxpayer side to get ahead of our pension debt. And it's nice that the staff has agreed to step up a little bit as well in terms of their contribution so that they can all retire with fully funded pensions. And so I'm pleased that this has come forward.
That's a great point. Thank you. Okay. Then can I have a motion to approve ordinance number 2025-3 to amend the Belvedere Municipal Code, Section 2.36?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
A roll call vote?
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkinson.
Yes.
Mayor Cooper.
Yes.
Councilmember Carapiet.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. And we will move on to other scheduled items. 10A is to accept a citywide user and regulatory fee study and direct staff to notice a public hearing item to consider fee adjustments. is, Helga, are you presenting this item?
Yes.
Okay.
So thank you and good evening, Mayor Cooper and council members. The item before you this evening is to present the findings and recommendations from the recently completed comprehensive user fee study. On September 9th, 2024, council approved the contract for ClearSource Financial Consultant to conduct the user fee study, which started in October. We have conducted several meetings with each department throughout this process. This is the first time the city has conducted a comprehensive analysis of its user fees. The fee study will ensure that the city has an accurate fee schedule that reflects the true cost of providing services. The goal of this study was to achieve maximum cost recovery while providing a fair, comprehensive, well-documented, and defensible method for identifying and distributing costs. If approved by the council, the new fee schedule would take effect on July 1st, 2025, the start of the new fiscal year. We are seeking the council's input and recommendation to schedule a public hearing to formally consider the proposed fee adjustments. This public hearing will need to occur at the April 14th, 2025 council meeting, as a master fee schedule changes require a 60-day waiting period after a public hearing and approval. At this time, I will turn over the presentation to Terry Madsen, the president of ClearSource Financial Consulting, who will present the study's results. Staff and Terry will be available for questions regarding the fee study.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you this evening. As mentioned, my name is Terry Madsen. I'm here from ClearSource, and our firm helps communities throughout the state identify and recover the costs of performing specific services. You've had a very full agenda. This evening, we have about 30 slides, but I will do my best to avoid being long-winded. The first half of the presentation focuses on commonalities throughout California. So fundamentals of cost of service analysis and fee setting that applies to you, your neighbors, their neighbors, and so forth. And then the second half of the presentation will focus specifically on Belvedere and talk about next steps. So just by way of background, primarily Belvedere provides what we consider user and regulatory fee services that help when you're regulating development within city limits. And most communities, when they're thinking about development-related services like plan review, permitting, inspection services, they use what we call user and regulatory fees to recover the cost of those services. So generally, we think of communities as using their tax dollars to fund services that provide broad community-wide benefit. Most of the time we think of this as like public works, public safety, park maintenance type services. And we use direct cost recovery mechanisms when we find a direct receiver of service. And so a direct receiver of service might be someone that needs their building inspected, their construction inspected, direct receiver of service, direct cost recovery. In this study, Belvedere is looking at what we consider service-based fees. So there's some human performing a service like permitting, plan review, inspections. We are not thinking about sort of the items that most of us think about on a day-to-day basis. We're not thinking about taxes. We're not thinking about utility rates. We're not thinking about special assessments. And we're not thinking about infrastructure impact fees. Only the service-based fees that are associated with something periodic happening, some sort of discrete construction activity happening, some sort of entitlement request happening, but not sort of your day-to-day activities like going shopping or something like that. So by way of just fundamentals and terminology, why do cities perform these types of examinations from time to time? The number one reason is to ensure compliance with legal requirements. The California Government Code and the California Constitution give us rules for fees. They say fees are not taxes, but in order to be a fee and not a tax, you have to follow specific rules. And the primary one is we're not in the profit-making business. It's the idea of cost recovery and fair cost recovery, fair and reasonable. And by fair, they mean a reasonable allocation of costs. So a lower intensity project would likely have lower costs associated with it than a higher intensity project. That's what we're trying to determine in a fee study is if we set fees, would they comply with California Constitution and California Government Code? And what's presented before the council, we believe complies with both of those. The other reason cities perform these types of services is by definition, when you recover the cost of providing these direct services from the receiver of services, you are freeing up your general fund resources to be used for some other purpose. And then finally, I think maybe the most important bullet point on this slide is when we recover our costs of service, we increase our likelihood of continuing to meet the service level expectation of our community. So when we fund our services, we can continue to perform those services. I mentioned that these are fees and not taxes. Because they're fees, they are adopted and approved by the city council. So at the conclusion of a public hearing, the city council considers any proposed adjustments and takes a vote whether to adopt the fees. I like to remind the council that we believe fees are intended to be dynamic. So you are adopting fees as of a certain point in time. But if legislation changes, if your organization changes, as better information becomes available, as your municipal code changes, fees are meant to adapt to those changes. And so the council should periodically review these and make adjustments as necessary. By way of terminology in my presentation, in your staff reports, you hear references to this idea of cost of service, cost recovery, subsidy. I just want to briefly highlight those items. In terms of cost of service, I mentioned this idea that these are service-based fees. So what we try and do is identify who is the service provider. Is the service being provided by building team, planning team, public works engineering team, so forth? What is the value of time and what is the typical service being required? So maybe something that's low intensity in effort might take an hour or two, but something that's significant in effort could take 40 hours. All we're doing is taking the value of our time and multiplying it by how many hours do we typically expect to perform this service, and that identifies our cost of service. Our cost of service represents our ceiling. So we don't want to set fees that exceed our cost of service. You could, by decision, set fees less than your cost of service, but you want to remember your cost of service is the cost to the city of Belvedere. And so whether you recover it from the applicant or from some other Belvedere resource, it is the cost you're incurring. And so frequently city councils receive this type of information and they say, oh, thank you. You've outlined for us what our cost of service is. Now, what do we do with this information? And just philosophically, what we see fairly consistently from community to community is decision makers using fundamentally something similar to this table above when thinking through what do I want to target in terms of my cost recovery levels? Do I want to set fees at my cost of service? Or is there some particular reason I might want to set fees less than my cost of service? And what we commonly hear is this idea that if I can see a very clear receiver of benefit, I typically target higher cost recovery levels. If I see a combined benefit, there is a direct receiver of benefit, but I believe the community also benefits. I might target some cost recovery from the receiver of service. And I might say the general community of Belvedere will bear some of this cost. And so two examples we use to illustrate this concept of cost recovery is this idea of if I want to add square footage to my home or remodel my kitchen, there is a cost of regulating that construction, but I am the one that enjoys the benefit of the new kitchen. I'm the one that enjoys the enhanced property values and so forth. And so frequently councils will say, I see the clear beneficiary of that is the receiver of that service. And so I'll target full cost recovery, because if I don't, it by definition means some of the neighbors or other businesses in the community are covering a portion of the costs of that construction versus parks and recreation type programs. So let's say I offer swimming lessons and I say the person that learns to swim is definitely a direct receiver of benefit. They learned a new life skill and so forth. But we do believe that giving them access to programming, giving them access to enhanced quality of life, all these different skills may warrant less than full cost recovery for that service. The community wants to participate in. Those are two examples that we frequently see on sort of different sides of the spectrum when you're considering decisions. It is the council's discretion. As long as you don't set fees that exceed your cost of service, you get to pick what your fees will be. This chart illustrates this concept. Let's say we had a $500 cost of service. If the council sets a fee of $500, we would say the city received full cost recovery. The receiver of service paid for that service. If the city had a $500 cost of service, but only collected $250 from the receiver of that service, the service still costs $500. We would say you have partial cost recovery. The applicant or the receiver paid half of it, and the other residents, the rest of the Belvedere community covered the other half via your general tax dollars. Typically, that would be the source of that funding. So that is common to municipalities throughout California. Now we're going to dive specific into Belvedere. And so in Belvedere, Helga had mentioned that it's been some time since you adjusted fees. This is your first comprehensive examination of fees. And so we had anticipated that we would find some room for enhanced cost recovery. That was our gut walking into this. The analysis supports that. What the analysis says is in the idea of providing fee-related services, Belvedere provides about $2 million of fee-related services per year. That is your cost of providing those services. The actual fees you collect from the receivers of service is about $1 million. So we would say you're at about 53% cost recovery. And it means $1 million is coming from the receiver of service and $968,000 is coming from some other Belvedere source. And right now that's typically your general fund. And so what do we do with that information? What we're thinking, the analysis that's been presented to you for general consideration and feedback is that we believe that Belvedere could enhance its cost recovery without sort of positioning itself as a regional outlier, without doing anything sort of outside the bounds of what we see in other communities. So the idea here is that the fees Belvedere collects are really regulatory in nature. There is a high level of direct benefit from the services that are being provided. Their construction activities that typically link to property enhancements, increased property values, and the idea that when you do recover those costs of service, you're avoiding having other Belvedere residents pay for someone else's construction activities. In order to enhance that cost recovery, when you have two mechanisms that you use to recover your costs of service. You have fixed fees and you have time and materials billings. So your fixed fees would be adjusted to correlate to your average cost of service. And where you use time and materials billings, you would adjust your initial deposit just to give somebody a better estimate of what they're likely to pay. And then you'd also adjust those underlying hourly billing rates that are currently used when you do charge time and materials. So that is the two mechanisms we would use to enhance your cost recovery is adjust the flat fees and adjust your hourly billing rates. Additionally, communities typically only perform these studies from time to time. So maybe like every 3 to 5 years, you might engage in this type of study, but it's not an every year effort. In the in-between years, most communities we work with have an inflationary adjustment built into the resolution. So they say, I'm adopting fees as of this moment in time, but I understand I have inflationary pressures. And so I'll tie fees to the change in regional cost inflation. And then I'll come back from time to time to ensure that I remain in compliance with law. And so the proposed resolution says adopting fees at a specific point in time and then inflationary adjustments in the interim years. So now finally, we're about to conclude. There's just a handful of slides here. Frequently, we're asked by councils, if I were to say yes to these proposed fees at a future meeting, at a public hearing, would what I'm being presented with sort of position Belvedere as a regional outlier? Is there anything I should be aware of? Fee schedules have hundreds of line items because they're trying to contemplate the various scenarios that could come through the door. So it's an unrealistic effort to compare all hundreds and hundreds of scenarios, and each city has different descriptions and so forth. So instead what we do is we grab a handful of fees at different thresholds, sort of minor project to mid-level project to major project, and figure out, is there some sort of general pattern we're seeing, and use that to sort of orient us. And so in these next handful of slides, I won't talk through each one, but the first handful are dealing with sort of small scale projects moving to mid, going to large. And the dark blue represents Belvedere today and Belvedere potentially tomorrow. And the lighter blues represent some of your neighbors. It's important to note that even though Tiburon is your closest neighbor, it hasn't updated fees since 2015. So what you'll see here is much lower than what you even have and what you're proposing. But I do think they're, out of all the spectrum we looked at, they've gone the longest without a fee update. And so this is just saying to you that today, Belvedere is within the realm of the region, and even tomorrow, if you chose to adopt updated fees in this building permit fee world, you would still remain in the realm of the region. All of these agencies, except for Tiburon, are within a few $100s of each other. And sort of this pattern continues as you grow in project complexity. You still find yourself, you're all sort of within that same general region. Not a lot of variation. I'm going to move to, so this is the larger project. And again, the fees would increase, but you would still remain within the region. I mentioned this idea of changing time and materials billing rate. In the planning department, you currently use time and materials for certain services. So you say, give me an initial deposit, and we have the opportunity to bill against that deposit. We think those rates just need to be updated to reflect sort of the current cost recovery principles in California, this idea of a fully burdened rate. And so that's where we would see sort of the most magnitudinal change. But again, the proposed rate, we feel like positions you right in line with the rest of the neighboring community. So overall, we feel like these changes could be made to enhance cost recovery without positioning you as a regional outlier. From a fiscal impact perspective, you know, it always depends on what projects coming through the door, what your development cycle looks like, and so forth. But we are anticipating that in this initial year, if the council did decide to say, I would like new fees to go into effect July 1, our analysis anticipates roughly $545,000 in enhanced cost recovery. And the idea here is this is to offset the costs that Belvedere is already incurring. So this is not an enhanced level of services or costs that Belvedere has today, and you're just trying to recover a greater share of those costs. We are targeting, the idea here is that the recommendations target full cost recovery for fee-related development. We just believe that in some circumstances where you use time and materials billing, we try and err on the side of conservative in terms of what we might see in an initial impact. There are two areas at the bottom of this slide where we see less than full cost recovery targeted. That's development-related technology and general plan update. Those are areas where you typically collect a surcharge. So you say your building permit fee is going to be X, and I'm going to add a charge for for contributions to future general plan updates or contributions to future development technology. The idea here is the proposed surcharges, they can vary from community to community. We've proposed a 10% general plan surcharge and a 5% technology surcharge. Those are consistent with what we see in some other agencies. And we would just want to avoid the surcharge sort of being disproportionate to the permit fee itself. And so that's the only area where we're deliberately targeting less than full cost recovery and sort of in the analysis, like broadly targeting less than full cost recovery in the analysis is proposed to council. So this concludes my presentation. As mentioned, the staff is requesting that City Council would direct scheduling of a public hearing where you would formally consider adopting these fees. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. That was comprehensive, so thank you. Do we have any questions? Anybody have any questions?
Sure.
Okay. Councilmember Burke.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to Helga and staff for driving this effort forward. So a couple of questions. So I think I now understand the 79% because when I first was reading the report, I was like, well, why not 100? But obviously that's the target, and the last two categories is what's keeping us below target. So I get that now. As you go through all of the different fees, I mean, have other cities or have other clients of yours found a way to further simplify things? It just seems very complicated. As a resident, I mean, when they're faced with this laundry list of fees and they're all different amounts and so forth, I get it that we're using math to sort of get to those numbers, but has anyone figured out a way to make it more user-friendly or more simplified? Because it just seems overly complex.
I would say your fee schedule looks very similar to most California communities. I would say your planning schedule is more simple than most planning schedules that we see actually. And your building schedule, I would not consider overly complex. When we connected with staff to figure out, is it usable, the usability of the schedule, can they consistently? So what we ask staff is, when projects come through the door, do you have a mechanism to consistently charge and recover fees for that project? And staff said, yes, the schedule itself works fine. I think some things that in most communities, I would have said, why do you even need this? But in Belvedere, I say to myself, oh, maybe you do, like hillside elevators, things like there's a fee for implementation of a hillside elevator, that if I threw it, I would say, no, who has a hillside elevator? And I simplify the schedule and remove it. And now I've actually removed something that does make it more simple to apply fees in Belvedere.
So in your experience, nobody's really found the secret to making it simpler and more user-friendly?
I would say we could create a simpler fee schedule for you, but I don't think your fee schedule itself is broken. I would say that based on our conversation, and I will tell you, we frequently meet with cities that say, I do not like the way my fee schedule works. I do struggle to consistently apply it from project to project, but we didn't hear that in Belvedere.
And I totally get that. I'm thinking of it more from a user standpoint or a resident. I mean, I think a resident probably, not that I've done this research, but I probably, if I did, would find that most people find it very confusing and very complicated. And so I was just thinking about if we could do a better job, or if a municipality could do a better job of finding a way to doing this work in a more user-friendly or simplified way. But you're saying nobody's really cracked that code as of yet, as far as you know.
I mean, I think in planning, you've moved to a lot more flat fees than we had. So that's already a lot of simplification.
Yeah, so that helps for sure. But I mean, this approach this is what everyone's doing. There's nobody's doing anything.
It's
sort
not
of
what
innovative or
everyone's
creative
doing.
or-
I would say you could modify, what I would say is there's lots of different approaches. And so what I consider more simple, we could hand to your department and they would say, yes, a user would be able to understand this easily, but I believe it's actually less fair to the applicants.
Okay, well, that's an important consideration as well.
Yes, so that there's a lot of different things at play.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, is as we revise our fees, if we were to, pursue the recommendations that the team is putting forward, I mean, Belvedere does move up to the top in many of the examples that you've shared. One position 2, position 3. I mean, if you looked at an average, I'm sure we'd be, index high above the average. Is that, do you think, mainly because municipalities like Tiburon haven't updated their fees very recently, or is there something unique or special about Belvedere that makes our cost higher?
So if I had to guess, I think it's a combination. I think that you're the newest agency we've examined. So every single city that we examined you against has by definition already completed a fee study. And so their fees were set as of a moment in time, and we know that costs increase over time. And then secondarily, staff had asked a similar question. I would say that in other agencies we've worked at that have sort of lower populations and even lower workforce counts, you don't have as much dilution of labor. So you can't spread costs amongst 3 junior engineers. You would typically staff fairly senior level positions, and the whole cost of service analysis is based on the positions providing service. And so for the most part, we would say if you compared yourself to an agency that has 8 people in the planning department, you would have a more senior level staff than them.
Makes sense. Thank you. That's all my questions.
So I had a few questions, sorry. You're going to be there. for a
I'll
while.
stay here.
So you said that smaller projects would pay a lesser fee, but when I look at the figures, it's like 25,000 was 900 something. And then you go to 50,000, which is twice the amount. And it doesn't go to 1,800, it only goes to 1,400. And it carries through all the way up to $1 million.
Yep.
So why is there that kind of discrepancy? Because I mean, $25,000 in my mind these days is like maintenance work. Not, I'm not going to get barely a bathroom done for that. So, why at $1 million is the fee where you most likely are having a brand new house or a substantial improvement? Why would that fee not be more representative or higher than what it is when there's actually more work done by staff to review a major remodel or a new home versus, say, a bathroom remodel?
Yeah. So let's pretend I don't have the numbers right in front of me. The slides are off, but let's pretend a $25,000 project has a $400 fee and $1 million project has an $11,500 fee. So we are saying the $1 million project has an exponentially higher fee than the $25,000 project, but you're saying I would expect it to have an even bigger fee because it's so much more work. What we typically find is this idea of economies of scale. So the line isn't this way, the line is this way. So if I had a $2 million project, it would be harder than $1 million project, but it wouldn't be double. So a $2 million project is twice as much as $1 million project. And if you ask the building official, is it double the level of effort? He would say, no, it's more than $1 million in terms of effort, but it's not a straight line. It's this curved line. And that's what you're seeing in the fees.
And then the other question I had was, I was listening to you and something popped in my head and then it all went away. Going from time and material to a flat fee. So how do we know that flat fee is going to truly cost? Because some projects really do take much more time. and time of staff
Mhm.
than other projects due to complexity, due to the actual applicant needing more handholding,
Yep.
all of those factors. So how do we know that applicant B is not subsidizing applicant A because they need to have their hand held and, have coffee served to them every day?
Yep.
That applicant B is, subsidizing applicant A's fee by having a flat fee.
Yeah, so when you hear it presented that way, you would say to yourself, let's never do flat fees because we could get really abused in that scenario. And so time and materials feels like a more fair method. What we encourage our clients to do is think through, is there any sort of homogeneity in these processes? And the idea is that what we've heard is from an applicant perspective, I'd rather have an idea, like I'd rather know my cost than have a to be determined amount. That would be helpful to me. That's what we hear from the other side of the table. The other benefits we hear from the flat fees is we can forecast more consistently. So we can say, I did this many of this permit type last year at this fee. If I do this many next year, I can expect this level of cost recovery and so forth. It minimizes the idea of having to track time and to follow and monitor and defend, all these kind of things that come up, requests for use of different staff members that might be at cheaper rates and so forth. But we say to ourselves, that exact scenario presents a danger. So is there a way for us to set fixed fees that are intended to recover no more than our estimated reasonable cost of service, but that protect the city and protect the applicant in an area where the fixed fee just doesn't work. It doesn't align to the service provided. So let's say you had, I don't know if this is a real scenario, but a design review, a minor design review that needed to come to Planning Commission. What we've talked with staff about is what is the driver of this extended level of work? So if we said there's a reasonable level of effort, what would take us outside the bounds of that reasonable level of effort? And what staff has said is we would anticipate that most projects might need to come before the Planning Commission twice. If they come before the Planning Commission more than twice, then we've expended some level of effort beyond what we would normally anticipate and what we would think a fixed fee would recover. And so in the fee schedule that'll be proposed for City Council, we'll say your fixed fees are intended to recover up to X level of service, up to 2 rounds of planning commission review. Once you exceed that, any planning commission reviews beyond that, you would pay additional fees, either per planning commission or per hour time and materials. Alternatively, if you had a fee in place of $10,000 because you were trying to figure out your homogeneous scenario, right? 6 out of 10 times, this is what we would expect to come in the door, and it's $10,000 worth of service. But something comes in the door and it is this category of service, but it is crystal clear they need 2 hours of work. You would have a mechanism to use just an hourly bill, like just move to a time and materials billing, where there's just a large variance between what we're anticipating giving and what the fee is in place. So we're trying to recover fair and reasonable costs as efficiently as possible.
Terry, can I just jump in there? Because at the moment for design review, we're still in the pack that the council's received. It's still time and materials. It's not what you just described there in terms
Yes.
of a flat fee.
Staff is considering before coming back to council in April, staff's going to be reviewing the idea of, are there any other planning fees that might be logical candidates for fixed fees? We encourage departments as much as possible, use fixed fees, use time and materials where necessary. But if you can build a structure that allows for fixed fees, even if you have multiple subcategories, we're always in encouragement of it. And so we've asked staff to just take one more look to see if there's any So there's a whole bunch of recommendations before the council that say this is a deposit-based fee today, a time and materials fee today. Tomorrow it's proposed to become a fixed fee. There's maybe 10 items left as time and materials deposits. One of them is design review that requires planning commission. And what staff has informed us is that is a high volume activity in Belvedere. High volume activities are activities that we would love to create a fixed fee structure for if we can come up with something fair. And so we're going to work on that and hope to bring that back to council to at least consider it.
So in Appendix 1, on page 10, you have inked out, you have crossed out, lined out appeal costs. You had the luxury of sitting through an appeal.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of staff time. Our time is free. But it takes a lot of time for everybody.
Yeah.
And so why do you have those fees crossed out? Are you going to be working on those fees?
It is in there. It's just the way your appeals were currently structured, we redlined. Now you're proposed to have one appeal fee of $3,000 regardless of whether they're appealing to the planning commission or the city council, but the appeal filing fee would be $3,000 in the proposed fee schedule.
Oh, I think I did read that somewhere. So that just took it out of that appendix.
It minimized
reworded it.
whether it's
Okay,
the
because I was
applicant
like,
or non-applicant. Yes.
yeah,
We're not removing them.
I don't know, 3,000 seems cheap for all the time we spend. All right, that was my questions. Well, I have a lot more, but they're pretty, I think what we're being asked tonight is just move it on.
Can I jump in with a couple of questions? Terry, do you mind pulling up the presentation again, the final page that shows the cost recovery? Sorry.
It's slide 26.
This one you want?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't see like this.
Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it would be helpful for you to explain here, because you'd mentioned for technology and general plan update, we're not targeting full cost recovery, but we are in all the other categories. And yet it's only building that you're expecting that full cost recovery in year one. Do you want to just explain why you don't meet full cost recovery in those other items?
Yeah, this is us attempting to err on the side of conservative. And so we really do, we have set your hourly billing rate to target full cost recovery. We've set the underlying fees to what we believe will target full cost recovery in most instances. But there's a few places where we feel like there might be some near-term challenges with getting there. And so the idea is, if you currently have some time and materials billing and it's billed out at $78 per hour, and tomorrow you could theoretically go to $200 per hour, and the region would say that is a reasonable rate of recovery. We would just say that we would not anticipate, based on what we have seen in other agencies, is a tripling of revenue overnight. So we would say, we would expect your revenue would increase by using that modified billing rate, but we would want to see over time sort of the growth in cost recovery. So we are telling you, we are wanting these fees to attempt to get to full cost recovery. We just don't think that it will necessarily happen in the immediate year in some of these cases.
So do you mean there that you haven't set the rates higher because you're worried about behavioral impacts, and so you're being more conservative in terms of how you're raising those rates for now?
I feel like we are raising the rates appropriately. What I have concerns with, and it's totally my own underlying anxieties, just dealing with like human interaction. If I'm a Belvedere resident and I'm familiar with the concept of this project, historically, I would have paid $5,000 for using a time and materials billing that used a $78 hourly rate. And now tomorrow, I can use a $200 hourly rate and I'm going to pay $20,000 for. It might catch my attention and I might be more likely to say, what is going on here? And then as a provider of service, I might say, you know, you got 12 hours of service when the reality is they got 20 hours of service. And historically, I would have billed you for all 20 because I felt very comfortable that you were getting even more than what you were paying for. But now when it's real fair cost recovery, I just think we have historically seen institutional pain in making these cost recovery adjustments.
But if, because so much of our activity and revenues are around the design review component, if we do move to a fixed fee schedule there, that would presumably get us closer to full cost recovery, but faster, but knowing that there's a backdoor for
Yes.
our staff to go up or down if they feel like somebody's not using the hours that they're anticipating or using more hours. So that's the benefit of moving these additional fees to flat fees, that they'll get us closer to cost recovery more quickly.
I think that's an accurate statement. I
Okay.
would think the challenge for you as a city council would be, like I heard, this idea of there might be some things that feel like that should be a low fee and they're very complex in nature. And so they actually have a very high cost of service.
Mhm.
An example is might be like fence. If I'm wanting some sort of exception to my fence height, or I need a review of my fence, and it feels like you just have a number in your head of what somebody should pay for that fence review. But when you actually think the same way that appeal came through the door, and you could tell there were many, many, many hours associated with that appeal. There may be other things in Belvedere that have many, many, many hours associated with them. And so as a council, you would just want to think through, do I want full cost recovery for that, even from a fixed fee perspective?
Okay, so I guess it will be interesting if we do analyze what the fixed fees might look like, how big they are for those
Yes.
different design review components, to see whether that's something that we think people would tolerate.
Yes.
Okay. Second couple of questions are pretty simple, which is, in your experience, what is a healthy period of time before you do another full review of your fees? Is it like every decade, or what is a realistic?
So what we always tell people is there is no predetermined guidance, but most of the time we say like every 3 to 5 years. And even if you went longer than that, it's when something significant changes in your organization. So your fees should be linked to your costs. If something in your organization shifts, if you restructure a department or something, you think that impacted Belvedere's cost, that would be sort of an idea of, hey, I might need to do another fee study to substantiate what I'm charging, make sure everything's trued up. But normally we say like every 3 to 5 years, and in the interim years, inflationary adjustments.
And during those interim years, I think we can still, in theory, contract with you, so that if, for example, Rebecca's experiencing, she's seeing a fee and it just doesn't after a year feel right, that she feels it's an undercharge or an overcharge, she would come back to you. And likewise, if there's any legal changes that affect fees, that's something that you would do as part of a simple annual review as well.
That's correct. What we tell councils is, in these types of studies, you're making decisions about hundreds of fees. In next year's inflationary adjustment, you're going to think through, the vast majority of my fee schedule just requires an inflationary adjustment, but it's not unlikely staff would bring you a handful of items that they say, I'd like to make a refinement that's outside the realm of an inflationary adjustment, either downward, upward, leave it alone. But you'd be considering a handful of fees, not hundreds of fees per year.
Okay.
And is that included in your current fee or that would be like a new fee?
It would just, yeah, that would be like an additional scope, but you have the mechanism to do it internally if you wanted.
And the idea, this concept of a backdoor where something feels out of line, does that relate just to some specific fees or it relates to everything that's a flat fee?
We've built it into all of your schedule. Like you have more than 3 rounds of plan review on the building side, missed inspections fees, these kind of things. And then in the planning side, we'll work with staff to figure out where it would be appropriate, but we would imagine it would be a footnote that is comprehensive to all fees that say there is a base level of service assumed in these fixed fees. And when we go outside that base level of service, this is the mechanism we will use. We'll either charge you a quarter for each additional, a quarter of the base fee for each additional round of planning commission time you need, or time and materials billing. We'll figure out a mechanism before we come back to you that we feel like, again, targets fair cost recovery, right? In California, it's estimated reasonable. We know there's circumstances that will look different. We're trying to capture the broad scenarios.
And so the final fees that are agreed will have all of those footnotes
Yes.
in. Okay. And then the other point I know the answer to, but I think it's helpful for people to know, these fixed fees, any legal costs associated with anything, any external fees, they're outside of those fees and they will be billed directly to the client, correctly?
Yeah, we in the schedule, we document that the fees that we're showing are fees for city service, any fees you pay for outside support to process or review an application. So attorney time, if you have Department of Fish and Wildlife fees, county recording fees, anything like that, specialized consulting services, those would be, the idea is they would be passed through to the applicant.
Okay, my turn. I am kind of going back to what Councilmember Carapiet brought up, which is the changes percent-wise, depending on the size of the project. And it appears that the smaller the project, the greater percentage of that project goes to the fees. And then as the project gets larger, Belvedere's proposed amount for $1 million project comes to 1.2% of the $1 million. But if the 25%, Belvedere's proposed number would be as large as 3.7 of it. I still don't understand that.
What you're saying, it appears, is you're interpreting it 100% correctly. So that's the idea, is even at a small project, there is some base level of effort required from your team to go out and do normal rounds of review. And as the project grows in size, there is a greater level of effort, but it is the idea of like, it's economies of scale. That is the best way to phrase it, is, and you can see it consistent from agency to agency. It's not just Belvedere. In every single one of your neighbors, the same concept is working out. So smaller projects still has some level of effort. And so if you put a fee on it, that fee in most instances is going to be a greater percentage of the project cost than it is at $1 million level. And it's just the way.
Logically, it doesn't make sense.
Have you corroborated that with our actual data?
Well, yeah, your data supports it. You can look at your cost recovery levels.
I can't speak to the building fee portion of it, but it's similar to our variance fee. If you look at our 7A and 7B variance from a planning standpoint, if you apply for a variance alone, the proposed fee is $68.32. But if you apply for a variance with multiple filings, meaning a variance and a design review, the fee for that variance is $39.04, because presumably we're doing some of the work through the design review process as well, right? So if you apply for them combined, the work is getting spread out through that project as opposed to the variance being solely on its own. So I think that's how it's applied through the building permit process as well. You're vetting it through all of these phases, whether it's a small project or a large project.
So then, I don't know, maybe this is a stupid question, but we have projects that are like 10 and 20 million.
Mhm.
So is that just a multiple of the,
Yeah, it would scale. A $20 million project would pay exponentially more than $1 million project, but it wouldn't pay 20 times more.
okay.
And if you ask staff, do they spend 20 times more on a $20 million project than $1 million project? They would say no. They would say I spend more, but not 20 times more.
Okay. Councilmember Mark, did you have any comments or questions?
Most of them have been addressed. Actually, Terry, thank you, Terry. While you have that slide up right now, I guess the question I would ask on that, I read that one of two ways, and it's probably both these ways, that the higher you are on this list, you either have higher inherent costs through the lack of efficiencies of scale, perhaps, and or you've also addressed greater cost recovery. Is that probably an accurate thing to say?
I think those would be two logical conclusions, potential conclusions. We didn't set fees for Mill Valley or San Rafael, but as a practitioner, I would say those would both be logical potentialities.
Okay. The second thing is, which was sort of Kevin's earlier point about what would be a simpler approach. And I think you're being very polite about it. But I think what's coming through and things you're saying is that we're not in the cost accounting business, meaning that no matter how good we might get at it, we're not a lawyer, we're not an accountant. We don't account for time as well as we probably should. So there's going to be inefficiencies and there's going to be breakage in that. So we're better off with a fixed fee on average. Is that accurate too?
That's an accurate statement.
Yeah. So I think I was just trying to give some bluntness to what you've been saying, but you've been more polite about it. Thank you.
Do we take public comment on that? Okay. Is there any public questions or comments here on Zoom?
We have Dr. Rothman.
Okay, great. Come on, Dr. Rothman.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. This is one of the most valuable presentations I have ever heard made to the council. What I take from this is that you are leaving $1 million a year on the table. By that I mean the consultant revealed that it's costing you $2 million and you are being reimbursed $1 million. That's what he said. So you are leaving $1 million on the table. Now, that just doesn't make sense because he explained that the charges you can levy can come up to the actual cost of providing the service. And yet you're leaving $1 million there. At the same time, we're told that the city has no money. You had that retreat, and what I read in the report in the ARC, in essence, it was we don't have enough money. We don't have enough money for the fire department. We don't have enough money for the police department, because all of the money that you're not collecting for these fees is coming out of the general fund. And then we say, gee, we don't have any money in the general fund. It wouldn't have to come out of the general fund if you were collecting the fees that you were entitled to collect. Now, besides that just doesn't make any sense. A little example, down the street, the house is going to be going on the market, new house in a month, $29 million. Next to it, there's a house that will be done in 2 years And that one's probably going to be twice as much because it's about twice as big. The fees for the amount of work that's put in and the fees that you can collect, how can you possibly be leaving so much money on the table and then saying to people, gee, we need money for the seawall, we need money for this, we need money for the police. I think there's an issue here. I mean, no disparaging, but I think there's a question of the credibility of the council's approach to finances if they don't start taking the money to which they're entitled from increasing the fees and doing it very quickly. Because how can you be asking people, some of people who don't have so much money, they've lived here for years, and they don't have so much money. You say, well, I'm sorry, we don't have enough money, we have to put a parcel tax in. The cost for the sewers, unless I'm wrong, the cost for the sewer charges have doubled in the last 7 years. Please start collecting the fees to which you're entitled. Thank you very much for your attention. Please get to this as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's our intention, so we're glad you agree. Do we need a motion to move this forward? To schedule a
Yeah,
hearing?
We need their recommendation. So we need your recommendation to schedule a public hearing for the April 14th meeting.
Can I make one additional comment? Because I know staff has begun to explore this idea of making design review that requires planning commission approval to move to flat fees. And I think that's a good idea. But one thing I think might be useful to consider is applications that are without any exceptions or variances and applications that include those, because the ones that include the variances and the exceptions presumably require a lot more time. And so I feel like you should have a category A and a category B, and so maybe have different levels of pricing to differentiate between those as well. So that's the only thing that I see of all of this that I think might still need some tweaking.
So do we need a vote to recommend it?
I think we have enough direction. Yeah,
You're just
I think
looking
we've
for
got enough clear
direction.
direction that we're going to agendize this for a public hearing in April
Right.
with the recommended edits.
So, I mean, I'd certainly say that I fully agree with Mr. Rothman that we should pursue full cost recovery in the items that have been recommended as soon as possible. It's incumbent on us to make sure that we're collecting the appropriate level of fees so that the general fund is not subsidizing individual behavior. So I think that is the direction that this is going in, and I fully support that direction.
I support it as well. I'm assuming we all do. So
Yes.
you have your direction. We look forward to seeing you in
Thank you.
April. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Cooper?
Yes.
My emergency circumstance exception has become somewhat more emergency, so I'm gonna
Okay.
ask permission to leave the meeting, if you don't mind.
Of course, of course.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for coming, Peter. Okay. Gee, we still have more to go.
We just say yes and yes.
Item 10B, consideration of a revocable license for private improvements in the public easement along Cove Road for the property 31 Cove Road. Do we have a staff report on this?
Thank you again, Mayor Cooper and council members. For your consideration is a revocable license application for new landscape and sidewalk improvements within the city's access easement for the property located at 31 Cove Road. In 2023, the applicant received planning commission and revocable license approvals to construct a new single-family home at 31 Cove Road. During the construction in 2024, the applicant submitted for design review to make changes to the approved plans. The proposed changes include a new landscaping, fencing, and mechanical equipment, as well as improvements within the city's 10-foot wide access easement for which a revocable license was required. Improvements within the city's access easement include 4 jacaranda trees in 36-inch boxes, which are listed to have a mature growth height of 25 feet tall, and flax lily to 1 foot tall along the fence line. Additional improvements within the city's access easement include a new 4-foot wide concrete sidewalk and 4-foot wide section paved with brick. The shaded portion represents the area where brick is proposed along the sidewalk. Here, the photo shows the existing sidewalk, which spans approximately 8 feet across. The brick pavers and jacarandas would be located on the 4-foot portion that is closest to the street. Staff recommends that the findings for the revocable license can be made as the proposed brick and landscaping enhances the aesthetic quality of the streetscape. Should council be in a position to approve the revocable license, a condition will be added that landscaping does not encroach into the sidewalk's path of travel at any time. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have questions for the staff?
I have one. So we got an email from Beth saying that our packet didn't have the last page, it didn't print out properly. And to go online to see the 3rd page, which I did. And I got confused because in here, they're showing that the cement sidewalk is 3.6 feet wide existing and a 4.6 wide brick. However, it's all concrete except where there was an existing tree. So but the AL 1.02 says proposed landscape plan. It doesn't say existing or anything like that. So I don't know why there's the discrepancy between AL 1.01 and AL 1.02. Because there's not brick all the way across.
Yeah.
I don't know, is the applicant here or the architect?
The architect is here right now.
Okay. So maybe that's a question for him or her. Either or.
Pat, are you referring to the discrepancy between this sheet and the other?
Mhm.
I know this sheet in particular was submitted before the final landscape plan that you see on the first sheet. And this was mainly to show the brick section down here. This was asked for by the Department of Public Works. Then sheet 1 is what was submitted. So that's the reason for the discrepancy. This is the sheet that we are reviewing for design review on the planning.
Okay, I understand that, but I think that A 1.02 could be confusing in the future. So I think that either this needs to go away because I don't know what difference it's doing from 1, and or they need to modify this to show what the actual existing condition was on the sidewalk. I don't know why they're showing existing that there's not brick all the way down. It's just in one small section. So maybe the architect can clarify that.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Phoebe Holscher, the architect. Yeah, I apologize if that's confusing. So Pat, your question, I'm sorry, I'm kind of having a hard time understanding what your question is.
So my question is why on A 1.02, you're showing the existing condition and the existing condition is not brick all the way down the sidewalk?
Yeah, I think there was probably some confusion between, there was some brick kind of portions around the existing opening nearby. So I think there was some confusion in how the drawing got mapped out. So
So, but it's inaccurate.
If it's calling the brick out as existing, yes, it's inaccurate. That
Okay.
drawing is inaccurate.
So is it safe for us to delete this page as an exhibit?
It's not part of the exhibit. I think A 1.02 is old and the newer sheet is sorry, I gotta zoom out, A 1.01, sorry, it's late. That is what went through design review, which shows the 4-foot sidewalk and the brick and the jacaranda trees.
Okay.
And so if that A 1.02, it looks like that could be in the building permit set, the old building permit set. And then it went through design review. So it makes sense that that was in the original building permit set. And then it subsequently went through design review. And this is the new sheet that has been approved.
Okay.
And so I think they were compiled from different
So
iterations.
we can
of
ignore that
planning.
sheet then.
Yes.
Okay.
I included that sheet with the brick just to show you what the brick would look like. Unfortunately, I probably shouldn't have because it was more confusing.
So the other question I have for you, Phoebe, now that we have you, is the Jacada tree is a beautiful tree, but it's only beautiful for a very short period of time, and then it does a beautiful blue exhibit on the ground.
Okay.
So, I mean, that just in street sweeping makes a bigger mess for the street sweeper to sweep up and on the sidewalk. So I guess I'm just wondering if that's the best choice for a sidewalk tree.
Yeah, that was the choice of the owners. It is a beautiful tree, the jacaranda. I love those trees, but I did not participate in choosing that tree. So do you want me to let the owner know and
Well, let's
see how
what-
they
and-
feel about?
Well, let's see what everyone else feels, but I just
Okay.
feel that it's going to put a bigger burden on the city and the homeowner, because they're going to have to sweep it up. It's just
Yeah.
that we get trees and, it's bad enough just having debris from oak trees and other trees that shed. But a Jakarta, I mean, it is beautiful, but you now have a blue sidewalk
Well,
and street.
Yeah, and I certainly understand that. I can say that knowing the owner as I do, I bet you he would be very happy to get out there and sweep up the debris from his tree. But again, I don't know. I would have to pass that on to him, but I know that he would be happy to do his part to take care of it.
Okay, thank
I
you.
know you can't really,
Yeah, we
maybe
can't.
vote on that, but.
Anything else?
Is that really a big deal? Is that really a big deal, Tony, to clean up that tree?
I think if it was in the street with other typical tree debris, it would be picked up by the street sweeper at the same time. I don't see it being a major issue.
Okay. I did read about it and it's what I read, and I don't know why the statement was made that it grows to 25 feet. I read that it grew to 66 feet high and that they produce large quantities of litter, including flowers, leaves, and seed pods, which are a nuisance to clean up. And they're considered high maintenance plants that need to be pruned regularly. And they are beautiful for a month or so, I guess. But I don't know if, do we have a saying in what goes into this? revocable license area?
I think we have the ability to, through planning and through public works, since it's in the public right of way, to dictate what type of tree goes in there, yes.
And I would just say that in terms of what is actually in the revocable license agreement itself, it does specifically at the current time call out jacaranda trees. So if that's something that the council wants to take a different approach on, or would like to undertake a different approach on, we would have to make the corresponding amendment in the RL itself. No, we wouldn't need.
Sorry, I didn't hear. what you
Yeah,
said.
can you say that again?
Yeah, so if you actually looked at the RL agreement that's attached in this exhibit, currently it specifically refers to jacaranda trees.
Right.
Right, so.
And
we-
we're saying that one of the issues of that tree is that they're very messy and
Right.
create more, they're high maintenance and create a lot of litter on the streets to be cleaned up and on the sidewalk. So I guess another question I have is walking along Cove Road, there's quite a bit of brick and then with trees in it and their bricks are all coming up, which is really a dangerous situation because of the roots. And so I was trying to understand if the jacaranda had, what kind of root system it had. Because it just seemed to me that as these trees get bigger and bigger, they're gonna have bigger roots. And it's, I mean, I guess I'm asking you because it's just a very dangerous situation on Cove Road to now be adding more brick with more trees, with more roots. So it's
Yeah,
a
Tony
question.
can maybe fill in on that a little bit, but my impression is that when we look at the path of travel, you're looking at that 4-foot section of
Right.
pathway. That's, when you look at a safe surface and a non-slip surface, that's what you'd be applying that to. The brick itself is out of the immediate path of travel, so there's a little bit more flexibility. If there was somebody to trip on that, the claim would not be the same as if it was a problem on the sidewalk. My only other thought about the trees is I'm not sure that we have these trees anywhere else
Yeah, I wondered
in
about, that was
Belvedere,
another
so
question. I
it's
had.
kind of hard for us
Right,
to understand fully what some of those impacts might be.
right.
But Tony, free to add on if you'd like to.
Not much to add really, except that, all trees as they grow, even the, sort of the less aggressive growing trees do cause problems. It's some of them are really bad and then others are not quite as bad. So, as far as roots go, that just kind of comes with street trees. But one of the things concerning the bricks, one of the things that we did ask for was that they would be mortared in, because some of the sections of bricks along that street are not mortared in.
Correct.
So they move more
Right.
easily with
Okay.
that ground movement.
So would that be a condition that we would put on it, that the bricks are mortared in, or is that an assumption that they would be?
Nope, that is a condition.
It would be a condition.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that would be helpful because I know a 4-foot sidewalk is legal, but if 2 people are walking next to each other, you're gonna walk into that brick, because I do it all the time when walking with someone, and you have to really pay attention, and otherwise you have to walk single file. So anything we can do to help that out, I think would be great, not to add to the issue. So, well, since the only experience I've had with the jacarandas are down in Los Angeles. Believe me, they're a total mess. So, but of course, there are many of them there, not just 4. And they are pretty, but okay, then I guess I would ask that we condition the brick to be placed in the mortar.
I think it already is.
I think it already is.
Oh, it is, okay.
And we can certainly work with the applicant on tree species. It sounds
I think
like
I'd just
she's
make
willing
sure
to-
he's aware of the,
Yeah,
it's easy to say, I'll sweep it up, but if it's,
right.
But if we want to require the tree to be changed, we can do that, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you feel strongly about it, then
No. Well, it's just not the applicant, it's we get wind, so then the debris blows across the street, then we get the calls from the neighbors, their debris is all over the place. So, They're beautiful. We have a couple in Belvedere, but they're mostly in backyards. And people do it so that there's this blue field of flowers around the tree after they fall, which is fine in their backyard, but just on the street, it just doesn't seem like a normal street tree.
Although I would counter that, much like the previous conversation we were having about finding balance in these decisions is like, so what is the, the desire of the applicant to, envision and execute the house of their dreams, the way they want it to look. And obviously, we're already saying that there's some beautiful elements of this tree versus the, the downside of some of the negative aspects, like the mess and so forth. It's like, so where is the balance? I mean, I err more on from what I'm hearing anyways, is like, defer to the applicant. If they really love that tree, I don't feel like, if Tony, you're saying it's not such a big deal. I mean, it feels like we haven't created enough of a counterbalance to the desire of the homeowner, in my opinion.
And I don't have another tree to suggest because I don't.
We're not tree people.
I'm not a tree
people like
person.
tree people.
No, I'm not a tree person.
Oh, Swan
No.
Hill, that's very popular.
Anyway, well, I guess I'd be satisfied as long as the brick is already is going in that way. We don't need to condition it.
We'll give them a broom.
They can give us the broom. Okay, so I have a motion to approve.
I move to.
Mayor Cooper?
Oh,
I'm sorry to
public,
interrupt.
oh, public, is there public comment?
There is. We have
And
Mr.
there is,
Rothman.
okay.
Oh, we got public comment, so.
Mr. Rothman.
Dr. Rothman, can you unmute yourself?
Mr. Rothman, you should be able to.
I did.
Oh,
Okay.
there you go. Okay.
I hadn't intended to speak about this, but the thing about the sidewalk getting irregular and dangerous, and then the tree maybe being 60 feet tall, I don't think those are inconsequential considerations. Does a 60-foot tall tree conform to the rest of the trees in that area? Would it seem very unusual or not very nice? And with respect to the sidewalk, that's I know that's a problem that comes up very often. I hear it discussed at the council. Who's responsible when someone trips over the uneven sidewalk? Could that be dealt with by putting vegetation, a tree, not a 60-foot tall one, but in a barrel, in a half barrel, like a half wine barrel that would sit on the sidewalk, and obviously the roots wouldn't go down under the sidewalk, so therefore you wouldn't have that problem. And also, I mean, maybe you feel it's fine to have a 60-foot tree on that street, but if someone says, well, a smaller tree that could grow in a barrel, that would be okay too. So I just offer that as a different perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I wish we knew more about, I know it seems silly, but does the tree really stop at 25 feet? Does it grow to 66 feet? Is it gonna just be a big, I don't know. I just don't know enough about it.
I had one other comment too, though. I mean, at some level, I feel personally that I want to defer to the planning commission, which they've reviewed this and they're sending this forward to us with their recommendation that we approve it, or their endorsement, correct?
Did
Or
it
no?
go to the planning commission or
No.
didn't
No.
go to the
It
planning
only-
commission?
It just went to the chair.
It went to the chair on design review exception.
Right, it was an exception.
Got it. All right, so the chair approved it.
It has not been approved yet.
Ah,
Oh, it hasn't been approved yet. Okay.
so is this a little early to come to us if we don't know what trees? I mean, can we approve the revocable license and take Jakarta out and say, you got to get approval? Or
Yeah.
do they need to come back once they decide what they want to do?
No, we can take out the explicit reference to this specific type
Okay.
of tree.
Yeah, do that.
Okay,
Additionally, on the landscape plan, it says that it's 25 feet tall, so that's what we would go off of.
Right.
There's a lot of Western garden books. You can Google these every tree and it'll give you a range from
Right, a
25
range.
to 66.
Right.
But we take that maximum height and width on the approved plan, and that's what we sort of hold them to. And that's what the neighbors also see, right? Because it has gone to the adjacent neighbors, and we have discussed it with them before coming here tonight, so
Okay.
they're
And
clear on
did
the
any
height.
of the adjacent neighbors have a pipe
They were
in?
fine.
They didn't say anything about it.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I would be comfortable if we remove the Jakarta and that whatever goes in is approved by planning chair, staff.
I think that would be sufficient direction.
Yeah. Because I think there's more choices out there.
So then I move to approve the revocable license for private improvements in the city access easement along Cove Road for the property at 31 Cove Road with the amended resolution removing the specific tree type, which will be approved by the planning chair at a later date.
Second.
Are we still roll call, Andrew?
No, since
Okay.
Peter's no longer here, we don't have to
Okay.
do roll call.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Sorry that was so tough, but thank you for getting there.
Thank you.
Okay, then we're on to 10C, consideration of a revocable license for private improvements to the public right-of-way along Tamalpais Avenue for the property at 1 North Point Circle.
Okay, thank you again, Mayor Cooper and council members. For your consideration, here's a revocable license application for new and existing improvements within the Tamalpais Avenue right-of-way for the property located at 1 North Point Circle. The property is bordered by Tamalpais Avenue to the south, North Point Circle to the west, and a private access road to the east. The site slopes down to the east at the rear of the property. During periods of heavy rain, stormwater gathers and overflows onto the adjacent properties below. On February 3rd, 2025, staff received an application to install a new drain box and drain rock within the Tamalpais Avenue right-of-way, shown here shaded in gray. The applicant is proposing to pump the gathered water from the rear yard and redirect it to the new drain box within the Tamalpais Avenue right-of-way, allowing it to disperse into the city's drainage system. Photo shows the approximate location of the new drain box and drain rock within the Tamalpais Avenue right-of-way. The site has existing improvements within the right-of-way which would not be altered as part of this project. These improvements include an existing driveway, fence, and landscaping. Staff recommends that the findings for the revocable license can be made as the proposed drainage system will protect city streets and surrounding infrastructure during periods of heavy rain. And the existing landscaping enhances the aesthetic qualities of the streetscape. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, no questions.
Oh, I have no.
Are there any questions from the public? Anyone on Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, we'll bring it back for any comments. There are none. Can I have a motion?
I
to
move
approve?
that we approve the revocable license for private improvements in the public right-of-way along Tamalpais Avenue for the property at 1 North Point Circle.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, our last item, open forum. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to briefly address the city council on any matter that does not appear on this agenda, but is within the city council subject matter jurisdiction. Upon being recognized by the mayor, please limit your oral statement to no more than 3 minutes. Under the Brown Act, council members may not deliberate or take action on items not on tonight's agendas. Matters that appear to warrant a more lengthy presentation or council consideration may be placed on the agenda for further discussion at a later meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to make a public comment or on Zoom?
Mayor Cooper, there are no hands raised.
Thank you. Seeing no one, and I will now close the open forum, and seeing no other business this evening, I will adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.